Are you good? Good evening. I'd like to welcome everybody to the August 27th, 2020 regular board meeting for the Washington Elementary School District. I welcome everyone. Ms. Shannon, could you do a roll call, please?
Yes, President Lambert. Governing board members present. Governing board president, Ms. T. Lambert. Governing board vice president, Mr. Bill Adams. Governing board members, Mr. Aaron Yannicki and Ms. Nikki Whaley.
And we're still working with Mr. Herrera to get him on.
Yes, we will acknowledge him when he appears.
Okay, great. Then we'll move on to item B, moment of silence and meditation. I ask us all just to take a moment and pray for the folks and keep the ones that are struggling in our minds and help them through this pandemic. And then Dr. Stanton, I don't know if you're back and can lead the pledge.
I certainly can, Ms. Lambert.
Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of
of the United States of America and
to
to
the
the
republic for which it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I would like to go ahead and have a motion to accept the regular meeting agenda, but I would like to go ahead and switch the approval of the consent agenda, which is item 8, and put that after the current events. If I could have a motion to accept that.
President Lambert, on motion to adopt the agenda with the modification of moving I above H.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second. Bill Adams.
Thank you, Bill. And Mrs. Whaley is the one who made the motion.
Sorry.
All in favor, please say aye.
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 And aye. Is Mr. Herrera on yet? No?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Herrera, did you want to be able to vote on this? All right, well, is there any nays? Hearing none, it passes. If I could have an emotion to approve the July 23rd, 2020 governing board minutes.
So moved. Bill Adams.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. Is there a second?
I'll second.
I'll set.
Thank you, Ms. Whaley. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? It passes. The next one is approval for the August 6th special governing board minutes, the meeting minutes from August 6th. If I could have a motion.
So moved. Bill Adams.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. Is there a second?
I'll second Aaron Yannicki.
All in favor, please. Aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? And it passes. We'll go ahead and do public participation. Board members. Does anyone have?
Public participation, Ms. Lambert, or current events and acknowledgements?
Oh, sorry, current events. Thank you, Ms. Whaley. I appreciate that. No, yeah. We kind of got those out of order.
Okay.
Let's go ahead and do current events.
Okay, Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr. Adams, go ahead.
Today I had the opportunity to participate with the ABEC webinar. And with that, Rodell partnered with Common Sense, I believe it is, and they had done a very comprehensive report. It was fascinating. The new soup from Boss, Dr. Kennedy, really did a fine job in regards to identifying some of the parts of the report I sent it on to Dr. Stanton, the report on to Dr. Stanton for his review, and he'll determine whether or not it's valued. He may send it out. But from my perspective and a number of people that were there, it's almost as if we're rehashing things that we've been working on for years and years and years and years. But the compassion and the passion of the individuals that were there was, as you would expect, extremely impressive. And the caliber of the individuals that were there was quite impressive. So with that, thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
Ms. Lambert,
Yes, Ms. Wiley.
thank you. I would like to just give another shout out to the teachers and the support staff for another week of virtual learning. I know that things seem to keep getting better. There, of course, I'm sure some things working out, but from this parent's perspective, we've really appreciated the effort of our teachers and are really starting to get into the swing of it. So I wanted to thank our staff for all of that they're doing there. I also had an opportunity to meet with some of our WDEA representatives this week, and I thought that was a really productive conversation just about what were some of the things we're going to talk about tonight. And then I also just want to acknowledge again, we're in this sad situation and state of affairs in this current week with another shooting of a Black man. And so I just want to again recognize that this is something that's not going to go away, and I continue to hope that as a district we work towards whatever we can do to contribute to a positive solution in our own way. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Yannicki, do you have anything? Okay.
Yes,
hearing
Ms.
none.
Lambert,
Mr.
I
Burke.
just want, no, Mrs. Lambert, I just want to thank everybody for, I've heard really good stuff about the virtual learning, at least in terms of the content and effort by our people, and I wanted to acknowledge that. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Herrera, hi. Welcome.
Hi.
Do you have any comments?
Just want to, can you hear me well?
Yes, we're doing good.
Okay. So just want to mention that there was a police officer killed tonight and in the Tohono O'odham reservation. So I want to just give, a little bit of, silent thoughts to him because he was killed in the line of duty. So, and anytime these individuals, put their life on the line, it's very, they don't know if they're going to come back home. So having a lot of friends in the police department, it is difficult for these folks. So, and then unfortunately we had another unrest and it's really tough out there now. But I did hear from a few of the teachers this week and, really, really happy with the 95% attendance. I think that, they're going into it. And I think tonight I heard from one that didn't want to go back to the learning because they kind of already getting used to it. So it sounds like they're kind of liking it. So interesting, very, very interesting. So anyways, that'll be all.
All right, thank you. I too, just my hats off to the staff. I know they are working under some extreme challenges as we all learn our way forward as we're going along here. So I've had a lot of discussions and emails of people that are curious about what's going to be happening. So this board meeting is at an apropos time. Dr. Stanton.
Madam President, members of the board, members of the audience, just a couple of things. Since our last board meeting, school did start, and so it's always exciting time, even in these virtual times, that school has started. We had our first virtual Meet the Teacher nights, and Dr. Bailey shared that the teachers were enthusiastic and the parents responded. I know that Mrs. Thompson will be giving an update on our hotspots later on, but we've given out over 1,500 hotspots to help out our kids in need. I want to thank on-site support, Dr. Bailey, Kathleen McKeever, all the folks that have been working very, very hard. And I know that Dr. Bailey will be giving that in her update, but the on-site support is up and going. And so we appreciate all the team and the families working with us on that one. So just a couple of things when we started. Perfect? Nope. Better than we expected? We're learning together, so it's braving new ground. So what do we do, for example? When we had a situation where we couldn't provide kids their passwords to get in, the team put their heads together and figured out how we can get more people to get those out through just basic phone calls and emails and communication. And so we worked on that. So I want to give a big shout out to Nathan and the team and everyone that worked on that issue along the way. Just a couple of facts. We've got 18,000 plus Chromebooks out. As I mentioned, 1,500 hotspots, and a big shout out to food nutrition. We have been to over 44,000 meals now. Unbelievable feeding our kids. And so we appreciate that as well. And then last but not least, I did get together tonight, and my team did with WDA. I want to give a nice welcome to Sarah Bennett and her team. We look forward to working you more this year. And then I also want to share a partnership started yesterday, or starting today actually, and on Friday we have Valley del Sol partnering with us for COVID testing and at Desert Foothills, and then Royal Palm will be soon after. So we're trying to help out our communities, and I want to thank the Valley del Sol and our communities along the way. That's it, Madam President. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Public participation. Ms. Tucker, do we have any public participation?
Yes, President Lambert, we have received a couple of public participation requests that I will be happy to read.
All right, thank you.
The first one we have, sorry, let me get organized here, thank you, is from Lance Brace. Lance Brace would like the board to know, he says that he is a father of 4 WSD students, 2 attend Lakeview Elementary School and 2 attend Ironwood School. He is disheartened by the educational resources his children are currently receiving. As he says, as an essential worker, he has not missed a single day of work since COVID-19 began. He says his job is far less important than educating children, and yet it has been deemed important enough for him to be expected to take the minimum risk of coming into contact with COVID-19. He recalls in 2018 when the Red for Ed movement gathered support for increasing teacher salaries. He says that the protest indicates that teachers believe that they were essential to our society, and it's a proposition in which he agrees with. Now, however, he says we are seeing school boards indicating education is not actually as an essential aspect of our society, and that inadequate online systems being utilized are good enough, and he completely disagrees. As a father of 3 kindergartners and 1 first grader, he wants to tell us firsthand how difficult his online education is on his students. He says they are not learning anything and require so much help with their computers that they require an adult to help them throughout the day. In addition, they are not being exposed to socialization, normally associated with these grade levels. He's asking that we vote to open WSD schools as soon as possible. Keeping the schools closed is nothing less than an affirmative stand that education is a secondary function of the schools, something he prays that we do not believe. The next one is from Kim Fona. She says that she has a special needs child, and also her daughter is an employee with Washington. Virtual school is a necessity to keep her kids safe. Her daughter is a one-on-one aide, and she needs to be able to keep her distance from other children in an effort to keep her son safe. She says her entire family is high risk and COVID could be fatal for them. She is begging to put the safety of the students and staff over politics. So many schools have, she says, so many schools have opened and watched immediate outbreaks occur. 1 child and 1 staff member is too much to risk. Please do the right thing. The next one is from Jill Basile. She says, as a WESD parent, she would like to submit the following questions and concerns for the board to consider. According to Harvard Global Health Institute, COVID disease mitigation means test positivity below 10% and disease suppression at or below 3%. before setting an in-person return date, what are our matrix? Will they be aligned closely to Harvard recommendations or the ones provided by the Arizona Department of Health Services with the red, yellow, and green light scenarios? As a district, will you be monitoring more long-term case studies of other schools that have reopened successfully and leveraged those learnings? Will you be establishing a multi-week transition plan to help parents arrange the necessity planning for in-person learning? Are you leveraging metrics and learnings from other COVID hotspots in the country to help guide what not to do in order to open safely? Will you be providing details on modifications for how parents should operate for pickup and drop-off scenarios? UNC Chapel Hill, Notre Dame, East Carolina, Townsend University, even Jerusalem, Israel. These places are all examples of in-person, back-to-back strategies that have moved online, the majority of which were forced to shut down within weeks of the opening. What is your contingency plan when there's an infection at a school? How do you minimize a repeated start-stop of in-person school? Excuse me, in the event of back-to-school learning, what symptoms screening measures will be in place at school? What equipment needs are you considering and how are you funding them? If there's a confirmed case at a school, what are the isolation, cleaning, and contact tracing protocols? How is physical distancing being maintained in classrooms and bathrooms and etc.? Has the district considering using alternative creative spaces for teaching to reduce transmission, including but not limited to cafeterias, gymnasiums, auditoriums, outdoor playing fields? Are you modifying student and staff mobility during the day? Or teachers rotating classrooms instead of whole classes of students? Thank you for listening. That will be all of the public participation that we received before noon today. President Lambert?
Ms. Shannon, Ms. Lambert she's not on right now. Something happened. So
Okay.
with everybody's approval, I'll just go ahead and move forward.
Okay. Vice President Adams, I just want to make sure, because when you approved the agenda, we moved the consent. I just want to make sure that the indication was you wanted to put action next and then informational items. Was that the understanding of everyone? Or was it the informational items and then action? Ms. Whaley, you made the
Nikki,
motion?
You're muted.
I believe that we were just in that we were moving the order of the approvals and we moved the consent agenda approval later. I don't think we moved the action item.
Okay. Ms. Lambert, welcome back. We can't hear you. Mr. Adams?
I'll unmute myself. That makes it even better.
Okay.
I apologize. I did not hear what Ms. Whaley had said.
I was seeking clarification from Ms. Whaley, since you weren't on, since you made the motion on whether or not when we adjusted the agenda, it was to move the consent after action and then information, or were we moving information on top of action? That was the question.
It was just to postpone the consent agenda until after the public participation.
Correct.
Oh. Okay.
So being that we're for the consent agenda, because it was about moving those. Is there anything that board members would like to pull?
G, can I pull G, please?
Was that the letter G? Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Miss Lambert, I also would like to pull something and making sure I can see where we're at because it's all been moved around. Can I pull item C, please?
All right. Is there anything else, folks? Okay, hearing none, if I could have a motion to approve consent agenda A, B, D, E, F, H, I, J, K, and L.
So moved, Bill Adams.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thanks, Mr. Herrera. That's who I heard first. I'm sorry if I missed someone. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, hearing none, it passes. We'll go back to, I'll just take it alphabetically if you don't mind, and we'll do C, Ms. Whaley. You're on mute, I think.
I don't know if
There
Ms.
you go.
Tucker can pull up the support document for C.
Yes, I'm trying to do that now. 1 second, please. Sorry. There we go.
No, that's not C.
Oh, I
That's-
wanted D. I think I missaw the, it was
No, you're-
scrolling.
Yeah, you're right. This just needed to be moved up. I'm so sorry. So it is you wanted the public gifts and donations,
Yes,
correct?
I did.
Okay.
Was it C before and I just?
It was
missed-
C before.
Okay.
Yes, it was.
All right. So my question is, we see a lot of gifts and donations come to campuses, and I've seen a lot recently that are coming from PTOs to the campus that they belong to. And I was just wondering if somebody can explain to me how these gifts are tracked by campus to know how many donations and gifts they received on average or during the year. And also a question about how PTOs are able to raise this amount of money. I think we approved one previously that was on here. $60,000 came from a PTO, and I see one here somewhere around several $1,000s from $6,000 from a PTO. So I was wondering if somebody can just kind of explain how PTOs raise these monies and kind of what they're used for, if they're used for in general or if they are dictated on how they can use it.
So I don't know if Kathy or Lynn want to help with that.
I can try.
Ms. Lambert? President
yes,
Lambert?
Mr. Herr.
Item
Miss-
D has already
yes.
been, item D has already been approved. So item C was the one that Ms. Whaley requested. So we already approved item D.
Madam President,
Yes.
there was, when I got clarification on how we wanted to move the agenda, I inadvertently moved the approval of the consent into the consent, which moved item C to D, but item C is public gifts and donations, and I've since corrected it. So that's the one that did not get approved by consent.
Okay. Then we'll go ahead and continue discussing this. And Ms. Thompson, were you going to be able to respond to Ms. Whaley?
I'll try. I can answer some of the questions anyway. The PTOs, a lot of the PTOs at schools have huge events every year, and that's where some of the bigger donations come from, such as your spring flings and your fall festivals and those types of things. Or they do school-wide fundraisers. Those are usually the larger ones that come in with the dollars coming in. What happens is they will usually submit a letter with that donation or something telling us what they want it to be spent on. And once they tell us that, we keep track of, we only will set up account codes for them in that area. So the school can only buy things that qualify under those account codes. We assign project numbers, like there's a PTO project number, and that is how we track it by school to know that that's the money the PTO donated, and then we follow in the list that the PTO has given us for what it needs to be spent on. That's how we ensure that the schools are purchasing even what the donor has asked us to buy with the money that they donated. Sometimes PTOs don't give a designation of how they want it spent. And so that's kind of one of the more lenient ways that the schools can spend money on things that other funding sources don't allow. Sometimes the PTO just says, we want you to use it for the teachers or things like that. So most of the time they put some specificity, but sometimes they don't even give us exactly how they want it spent.
So I have a follow-up question, if I may, Ms. Lambert.
Yes, go ahead.
Kathy, is this money tracked in terms of kind of, I assume if it's an event or something like that, it's probably a pretty regular event that they may do every year. How does this play into the site monies that we give to schools?
It's supplemental. Everything that they bring in from PTOs and gifts and donations is all supplemental. We do not subtract anything from what we give them based upon money that comes in from other locations. Is that what you're asking?
Yes, so they all get the same amount. So say this is smaller numbers, say we give $500 to every campus for campus activities, projects, whatever it is that we give them money for. And one school brings in $60,000 a year in PTO, and one school brings in $3,000 a year in PTO. They still both get that $500. So this person now has $60,500, and this school has $3,500.
Yes, ma'am.
So we can have some really significant inequities in terms of the funding that is going to a particular school.
Ms. Thompson, if I could ask you a question to follow up with what Nikki is saying. They're supplemental, so they do not buy a teacher to pay for science. They do not do other things. And then by the state statutes, we're supposed to make it, I've forgotten, it's part of the maintenance effort and supplant versus supplanting, but everybody gets the same ratio based on the formulas we use for all schools. And then the PTOs or having some of the other organizations that chip in and help schools, it's for the supplemental thing that would go above and beyond what we supply as a state.
But if you have a school that's getting $60,000 to buy extra after school activities or give every campus a special backpack or pay for an outing or something like that, some of the enrichment things, you're going to have some campuses that are going to be able to do that for their students and their students will have access, and you're going to have some campuses that will not have that. So what I'm saying is there are inequities because we know with school funding the way that it is, that all of those extras are cut. And the only way to do that is through these campuses running PTOs and donations, kind donations and gifts that we're getting from our communities. My concern is that if a particular campus has more veteran or perhaps more talented hustlers in terms of getting that community dollar or getting those parents, or has a community of parents that are more able to give, that school is going to benefit over a campus that does not. And so that's my concern. I'm certainly going to still motion that we approve these gifts and donations. I would never deny that, but I certainly think that this is something that we need to look at as a district to ensure that all of our kids are getting those quote unquote extras that are paid by this supplemental income.
If I might,
Madam Chair, Madam Chair, may I?
Do you want to wait? Ms. Thompson wanted to make a clarifying remark. Is that all right, Bill?
Sure.
Okay, sorry. Go ahead, Ms.
There
Thompson.
may be some discrepancies. Some schools may have more gifts and donations coming in as far as like PTO donations. And there might be some schools who have a lot more than others, but there's also a lot of schools who get donations from the community that far exceed what some of the other schools bring in and just regular gifts and donations. So you'd be surprised at how much there is at even some of the other schools that may not have the PTO groups that bring in a lot of money, but other groups bring in money for them and give them donations. So it sometimes it plays out pretty decent.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Adams.
Thank you. Having been on a PTO for many years, it's parent participation, it's community based. I believe in Kathy and T, you can correct me, but they're standalone operations, if I'm correct. And the money that they bring in, they do it for their campus and for their children and for their neighbors' children. So I don't know what your solution might be, because you're talking about disparity between the dollars that one campus may be able to bring in versus one that I'm at Cactus Wren. We've always had a very, very difficult time. They do those that are involved in our PTO, for the record, God bless them, I thank them every year. But our neighborhood, it's tough for us to get the dollars up that we like to have. Then you look at some other campuses, and you're right, they're getting a lot of money, but their parents are involved, and they have the wherewithal to go out and solicit for additional dollars. But it's up to that PTO to decide where those dollars are going to go. I don't know what a solution might be, but you also need to be cautious of if the district comes in and even suggests that we're going to take any investment or donation from a PTO and place it with another campus, that PTO might get upset and say, why are we doing all this work for our campus and you're taking it all and putting it someplace else? So that we've got to be cautious. That could actually backfire. It's the nature of the beast. And those parents that are involved in the PTOs that do these festivals every year that just break their backs trying to be as successful as they can, I thank them all. I just think that this is something that you got to be very, very cautious with, because those parents really work hard to bring those dollars in, whether they're extremely successful or whether they're just successful. So again, those individual PTOs have the right to put those dollars where they wish.
Right.
Okay.
If I may, or if I don't know if Ms. Lambert or if anybody else wants to say anything before I respond.
Well, no, but I don't want to get too lost in the weeds. We still need a motion. Discussing how and what we do from here on after would be a great future agenda item. But
Yeah, I was just going to say exactly that. I wanted to clarify that I was in no way saying that we take money from PTOs. I was simply pointing out that there is an opportunity and that we're not aware of to what extent this all washes out amongst our different campuses. So anyway, I can go ahead and make a motion that we approve.
Well, excuse me, Mrs. Whaley, just for clarification, I believe that the board members are aware of the disparity.
I didn't aware of the money that goes between the two because Kathy Thompson just said that it actually kind of washes out for the most part.
I think that we all get a report in regards to what those dollars are for the PTOs and stuff like that.
Okay, Mr. Adams. So with that, I would like to go ahead and continue.
Ms. Lambert
with the
actually has
motion.
something.
Okay.
Ms.
all
Lambert.
right, Mr. Herrera.
Yeah, first of all, shout out to all these organizations that really give our schools money, especially obviously the Halstead family, which they've been doing that for years. Really appreciate that. And then also the Moon Valley Gardens Block Watch. Candace and her team, they really do a good job. They actually get donations, at their meetings. So I've actually seen that in action. And that's really, really, it's like pennies what they do. They put that together in a bucket. So, and then of course the North Phoenix Kiwanis, they've been a great partner to us. I think if we really want to look at what affects our students, we need to look at the cell phone tower. Bill's right. We do get a report every so often, and that cell phone tower. That's these companies that come in and they give us 0.001%. Verizon and T-Mobile of a land lease. In order for us to annex the billboard or the section of property to put that cell phone tower up, and then they give us, that's a multi-billion-dollar company, but they give us back, 100,000. That's really where the inequities is at. Is the cell phone tower companies. That's really where I think that would be probably the best use of time for us to look at, because those companies, they're multi-billion-dollar companies, and then they're giving us 0.0001%. It's pennies for what they're making off these cell phone towers off the locations of the schools. So, anyways, that's my 2 cents of the 2 cents. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Whaley, would you like to go ahead and make a motion?
Muted myself. I'd make a motion that we go ahead and approve item C as presented.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion, Mrs. Lambert.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Yannicki. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any
Aye.
opposed? and it passes. I'm going to go ahead, and while we're on this topic, I want to take a moment to thank everyone who does support our schools: American Express Foundation, Arizona Diamondback Foundation, Arizona State Professional Educators, Desert Financial Credit Union, Desert Mission Food Bank, Grand Canyon Education, Halstead Family Foundation, Kimberly Powers, Kroger's, Larry Fitzgerald Foundation, Moon Valley Gardens Neighborhood Block Watch, North Phoenix Kiwanis, Ocotillo Bulldogs, Office Depot, Peter Piper Pizza, the Benevity Community Impact Fund, the Popcorn Board, Walmart, the Washington Park Neighborhood Association, and Mr. and Mrs. Whitaker. Thank you for all you do for our students. So now we'll go ahead and go down to G. Mr. Herrera, did you want to talk about this one?
Yes, thank you very much. So this one is Valley of the Sun United Way. You know, we've had this partnership for a few years now, and I didn't see where, I just have two quick questions. The first one is, what's the value, the dollar value of that? And then is that, you know, maybe, I guess my question is threefold. What's the dollar value of this program partnership? And then is this the same one that we were pushing to increase first things first through the state legislature to get them to fully fund it? And then also the last one was, you know, looking at possibilities to increase it, because I noticed that the 5 schools that it's at, they have the certain programs for 4-year-olds, especially Chaparral. They have that 4-year-old program there, which is really, really good. And then is there any way we can expand it to other schools?
All right, thank you. Dr. Stanton?
Well, I might have to turn to Miss Dr. Bailey or Kathy. I don't know if we have the answer at the board meeting for right now, but can you guys answer to Mr. Herrera's question? Now, I do have this as F, by the way, just so, at least according to mine. Is it that way G because of what happened there, Miss Tucker?
Yes, I was going to make sure that we get the record straight that when Mr. Herrera wanted to discuss F. And so when we approved the consent agenda, it was all items except for C, public donations, and F, the approval of the Valley of the Suns. Is that correct, Mr. Herrera?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Just want to make sure I got it. Okay, so Kathy or Lynn, can you help out with the first things first questions, Valley of the Sun, for the early childhood kids-based programs, also known as ECE?
Well,
I don't know if Kathy wanted to go or.
Is Kathleen? I think.
I am. Yep.
Oh, Kathleen, good.
Yes, I am here. And I do have some information. I don't quite have the dollar amount, Mr. Herr, but I can get that for you. This cooperative agreement provides us 52 scholarships in 5 schools. It gives us, of course, the scholarships to keep to allow the students to participate in our amazing ECE program. It also provides coaching, and we get materials, and we get enhancement funds as well, just to keep our programs running effectively. We have to have a certain star rating to receive these funds. So we work really hard, and we have a very good reputation with our ECE program. So I don't know if that provides enough information for you.
Yes, it does. Do you know if we have if we're looking at expanding that, because that's something that's really, I think all kids should have that, because that early childhood enrichment, that's like key right there. It's almost like in addition to Head Start, some of the stuff that they work on, especially with the kids. That's really, so I really applaud the work that you're doing there. And I've been kind of watching it closely, and I really do appreciate. You're right. We do a really good job. And I've actually heard from a few parents on this one that they come here just for that. And I know, especially Abraham Lincoln, I know that the parent that she comes from, she sends her kids, they come on the bus to 43rd Ave from Osborne all the way to Abraham Lincoln. So I'm really happy with this program. I'm glad that we're continuing it.
Yes, Mr. Herr, we are always expanding this program because we know the importance of our early childhood programs, in addition to the Head Start and other programs that we already have that are amazing. So we have been expanding every year. We are at 7 locations now, and we will continue under the direction of Dr. Bailey, who helps us with this project directly as a member of the First Things First board, to make sure we are continuing to expand as many opportunities for our students and get these amazing scholarships and resources so we have effective programs. So yes, we're expanding every year.
Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Mr. Adams.
Yeah, I just want to thank you for pulling this one. First things first, I had the great opportunity of being involved with them at the concept, and to watch this program just continue to grow. Ms. Diver, thank you for everything you do. I think you've been involved since I was involved with it, and I'm absolutely tickled that Dr. Bailey has been doing such a beautiful job representing us on their council. So just a quick thank you to everyone involved, and again, my pride for First Things First just continues to grow. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Is there any other comments, or would someone like to make a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you.
Motion that we recommend that the governing board approve the participant agreement with the Valley of the Sun United Way to administer the First Things First scholarship program for the WESD Kid Space Early Childhood Enrichment Program, and authorize the superintendent to sign all related documents.
I'll second. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Adams. Could if all in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? And it passes. Thank you. So we will move on down to items 3, action and discussion items. From here on out, Ms. Tucker, I'm so sorry I caused confusion in the beginning. We'll just run it forward from where we're going. So the first thing is 3A, to discuss a temporary rate increase for parapros working as substitute teachers. Mr. Wing?
Good evening, Governing Board, Superintendent, audience. Correct, as we are planning and preparing and continuing to move forward with the distance learning only model plan, we needed to explore all of our opportunities to ensure we're able to provide substitute coverage for a teacher absence. In our face-to-face instruction, the primary opportunity to provide this class or that class coverage would be with the substitute teacher pool. However, some substitute teachers are not willing to substitute at this time. Despite us offering technology training, they may not be comfortable with the technology side of it. There's some other obstacles too, such as providing them the teacher link so they can connect with the students and have the teacher rights within that link. So we had to explore other opportunities for substitute coverage. One plan we worked together on with the school administrators is to allow our paraprofessionals and other staff on campus to be emergency sub-certified during this school year, in which they can take the role as a substitute teacher. They cannot do that without having that certification. One of the benefits is that those individuals, such as the paraprofessionals, the BSAs, the library technicians, have that interaction with the teachers. And so if there's a known absence, the teacher can work with the paraprofessional the day before on the technology aspect. And also, because we have generated first quarter lesson plans, they're able to leverage those lesson plans. And so they are going to be stepping out of their paraprofessional role and into the substitute teacher role. Hence the recommendation to pay them $5 more per hour than their currently rate of pay. It will be, we do have budget for that. It's within our substitute teacher budget. So rather than paying the substitute teacher a daily rate, we're able to apply those dollars to meet this $5 extra for the additional responsibilities of that staff member.
Okay, board members, any questions?
Yes, Ms. Lambert, I was going to
Go
wait and
ahead.
see if anybody else had something first.
Well, I have a question, if you don't mind.
Not at all.
Okay, thanks. Justin, I was curious as to what kind of criteria are you using to ensure that our parapros have the skills that are needed to carry forward as a substitute teacher?
Yeah, this is not going to be, good question. This is not going to be applicable to all of our current paraprofessionals. It's those identified by the school administration and teachers' recommendations as well, who is comfortable. And the other side too is some paraprofessionals may not be comfortable doing that substitute teacher capacity as well, but it'll come per recommendation from the principal to human resources. We will actually process their fingerprint because they do have to have a fingerprint card. They get fingerprinted when hired, but there's a separate method for those who are obtaining a certificate. Same results, just one, you get like a driver's license size card. And we also are going to help work with them to get certified through the Department of Ed. This is something that we have contacted and has shared with the Arizona Department of Education as well.
All right, thank you. Ms. Whaley?
Thank you. That was my question too, and I think I still have it. It's teacher recommendation, but there's no minimum requirement, no AA degree, no background. I mean, I'm just trying to figure out what the minimum requirement is, or is it just principal recommendation?
To be a paraprofessional, you have to have certain requirements as well.
Okay.
You have to have either an AA degree, 60 college credit hours, may not align to an AA degree, but the quantity of credits, or to pass a state-approved paraprofessional exam.
Thank you. I did not know what the requirements were to get a paraprofessional certification, so that is helpful. Couple other questions. One, who replaces the parapro that is doing substitute? Do they keep their parapro position and then they substitute, or if they're a long-term sub, how does that work in terms of who will replace that parapro if they step into a long-time sub situation, or if it's just temporary? How does that work?
Most of these are going to be for the daily assignments, and so you may have one day where you don't have a paraprofessional.
And they will just make a different rate for the day that they're stepping into these duties.
That's correct. And then their normal rate of pay the following day. We're still leveraging our substitute teacher pool for the long-term assignments. We do have a plan in place where if we have a need for a long-term assignment, that substitute has a transition period in which they can get technology trained, work with the teacher and the school before they just get their first, before they're instructing their first class.
So this is not something we would look to do like a long-term. This is the one-off, and we can't when the pool is not available.
It is something that IBN has considered in the past, actually. Some of these individuals are aspiring to be a teacher or going to school at night to be a teacher, or looking into the Teacher Academy grant. Last year, we brought in universities to, I think we're the only district that has done this so far, to my knowledge, bringing colleges and universities and sharing so they could share their Teacher Academy grant. And a lot of it is aimed toward paraprofessionals who can work while going to school to be for the College of Education to be a teacher, and a possibility of getting a scholarship through that grant. So there's some potential recruiting purposes for this too. But IBN didn't move forward last year going into this year, but it was an option that we considered. So I don't want to say this will be the only year we do it, but I guess we'll see how things go moving forward.
All right, and then this is my last question. The $5, how is that determined? Is there a minimum depending on where the paraprofessionals are currently making? Is $5 going to be in line with what a substitute teacher would normally get, or are they going to be being paid significantly less? Is there a minimum that we want to pay these folks for stepping into these roles?
I mean, any dollar you pick is going to be arbitrary. So I'm not going to tell you there's some kind of science or formula behind the $5 an hour. I will mention that, the substitute daily rate, the paraprofessionals would be close to earning that anyway. So the $5 is more of a motivator of, hey, if I'm taking in a different responsibility, I should get paid, or I want to get paid more, versus being paid the same and equivalent to a sub teacher, but moving from a parapro role to that sub teacher, different responsibilities, type of thing. So it's more of a motivator to take on those responsibilities versus just keep with your current status quo position.
Okay, no, that makes sense, because I wasn't sure how much the rate for a regular sub was, so I wanted to make sure that they were at least making that and that this was going to be something that was a benefit to them. So the $5, most of the parapros are already about where the average rate is for a sub, so this would really be more than what they would expect a sub to make.
This will be more than a daily sub rate. They will be
Wonderful.
earning more than a daily sub rate.
Okay, that's what I wanted to check. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Mrs. Lambert,
Yes, Mr. Yannicki.
thank you. So if I'm hearing it right, this would be an opportunity for a parapros to sub and make more money and provide a need, not requiring a bachelor's degree. Because typically a substitute requires a bachelor's degree. Now, my mother was a parapro. I wanted to be a joke and say a district to the west, but Glendale Union, okay? She was a parapro for an ELL. When they had a sub, most of the time, unless she got a really good sub, she was doing most of the work anyway. So the idea is to kind of take that, deal with the issues we have with respect to shortages of subs, reward that employee for stepping up. Am I correct in that assertion? That that's kind of the goal of this program?
Yeah, you're spot on. And some of it, again, is the distance learning only format. There's also the barriers. On top of that is also the technical barriers as well for the substitute who may not have any experience at that school, just showing up because they got the call in that morning or whatnot and having trouble setting up and starting class on time.
Okay, all right. Well, that answers my question. I think so. We don't have an opportunity with Bridge with this because this is really something we're doing incrementally with respect to the students on campus, on-site campus assistance.
This is just one of many options to provide sub coverage. It's not going to be the sole one. It's not going to be maybe even the primary one for many schools. It's just going to be a option. And this may reduce the burden of teachers having to cover more classes, splitting classes, etc.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? Okay, not hearing any. Is there a motion?
Ms. Lambert, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the temporary rate increase for paraprofessionals working as substitute teachers as presented in item A.
Ms. Tucker, is that okay, or do we need to go ahead and make the motion that would include the dollar amount?
Oh, okay. Well, that screen's not up, so I can't see that.
Sorry, is it all right if I go ahead and read it?
Okay, I see it now. I make the motion.
Okay, great.
I make the motion that the governing board approve the district paying $5 more per hour for paraprofessionals and other school-based staff who become certified and act as a substitute teacher for an absence.
Thank you, Miss Whaley, and my hat's off to you because that is little itty bitty type. Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second Bill Adams.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. I'd like to go ahead and do a roll call vote on the action items. So if Ms. Tucker, if you would do so.
Yes, President Lambert. 1 second here. Let me get, okay. Ms. Whaley, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Herrera, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Yannicki?
Aye.
Mr. Adams?
Aye.
And Ms. Lambert?
Aye.
The motion passes 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to item 3B. This is the policy review and adoption. Ms. Tucker, I think you're more familiar with this. If you could just briefly cover that. Don't hit me.
I would never. Okay. As many of you are aware, we are part of ASBA regarding our policies. So ASBA provides us with updates periodically when various laws are new, updated, revised, and they let us know which policies we need to adopt or revise accordingly to meet the requirement of law. So recently, as you can see in the summary here, there was a update released by the United States Department of Education, Office of Civil Rights on May 6th. It became effective on August 14th, but we were only notified, and these dates are wrong, so I'm sorry. I think it became effective August 14th and we were notified on the 13th. That's a typo in the summary. So what ASBA is recommending, it is law, so we have to follow law, obviously, because law trumps policy, that we make these updates in one meeting as outlined, as authorized, by BGB. And what it's doing is it's updating our current policy because we already had a policy for sexual harassment, which was ACR, and it's updating the regulation, and then it's creating a whole new policy, which is ACCA, which is Title IX sexual harassment. So at this time, we, the district, are asking the board to adopt the amended, the edits to ACA and adopt the new policy ACAA in one meeting.
Thank you for that. And do board members have questions? And I'll have Dr. Stanton step in for the questions and take Ms. Tucker off the hook. Are there any questions? No? If I could have a motion then?
Mrs. Lambert, I move that the governing board adopt the revisions to the ACA-sexual harassment policy and adopt the new ACAA Title IX sexual harassment policy as presented in a single reading as authorized by BGB policy adoption.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. Whaley. Ms. Tucker, if you could go ahead and do a roll call vote.
Yes, ma'am, if I get my mic to work. Okay, so can I have your vote, Ms. Whaley?
Aye.
Mr. Herrera?
Aye.
Mr. Yannicki?
Aye.
Mr. Adams?
Aye.
And Miss Lambert, I apologize, Miss Lambert.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion passes 5-0.
All right. Thank you very much. We'll move on to 3C. This is to, I put this forward to help us. The one thing I had noticed as we have been going along, I think that we all are so comfortable in doing webinars and meetings on virtual reality that being that we are a formal legislative governing body, I wanted to be sure just in the future, just get it down in writing, the things that we have learned that would help us have more productive virtual meetings and have it attached to policy BED. Are there any questions?
Ms. Lambert?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I'm going to be recusing myself from this vote because this item was sent prior to without public notification. So I believe it's an open meeting law violation. So I will be recusing myself from this vote. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Herrera, but let me reassure you that it was on the agenda before there was communication, and the communication was just my advice to you of what was going on and what was going to be in the agenda. So I did have legal check it, and it's not a violation of an open meeting law. Are there any other questions? Statements? If I could have a motion?
Madam Chair.
Yes, sir. Mr. Adams.
Okay, so I'm going to move that the governing board approve the new governing board Regulation, BED, meeting procedures and bylaws.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Yannicki. Mr. Tucker, if you could do roll call, please.
Yes. Ms. Whaley, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Herrera? Are you going to abstain? Mr. Herrera?
I think he's texting.
Mr. Yannicki?
Aye.
Mr. Adams?
Aye.
Ms. Lambert?
Aye.
And based on the previous statement, I will, with your okay, President Lambert, mark Mr. Herrera as abstaining.
Well, I'd like him to abstain during the vote, just not
Okay.
making a statement advance.
Mr. Herrera, can I get your vote?
Yeah, I already said it earlier.
Is that
But we're
you want
voting,
to
but we're
abstain?
voting now.
Right, Ms. Lambert, I recuse myself from that vote. Thank you.
I'm sorry, Ms.
Okay.
Lambert?
Yes,
Do I just mark, I just want to make sure I get the marking. I'm going to mark Mr. Herrera's abstaining per his request.
I don't know.
He
He
recused
recused
himself.
himself. He
Right,
didn't abstain.
okay.
I don't
Which
think a
part?
recusal and abstention are the same thing.
Okay, in the
No.
minutes, I can make sure that I make it a recusal, but for board docs, unfortunately, that's not an option for me to check. So if you're not present or abstain, is that okay with everyone so we can record the vote? It will be
I'm fine
noted
with
in the
that.
minutes. Mr. Herrera, are you okay with that? Mr. Herrera? Ms. Lambert, how do you want me to proceed?
We'll go ahead and it will be 4 ayes and we leave it at that.
Okay, the motion passes 4-0-1, I guess. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and move down to 3D. And this is the political agenda that ASBA has been working on. And so if everybody had a chance to review it, to see if there's any kind of input or any discussion points that you want to make. And this doesn't really have a motion to it, does it? But
Madam
we can
President?
always- Yes, ma'am.
Yes, if you recall, the board did discuss their own priorities and they submitted that to ASBA. And what ASBA has done is, and I can pull up the cover letter, is they've taken all those submissions from all the districts and they've put together a draft of their political agenda. They've asked for it to be reviewed. I guess if there's any comments, that would be pretty much the motion to accept, but it's really the next item. You have to pick a delegate if everyone is okay with the current language that ASBA has put together for their political agenda.
Okay. Are there any questions or comments from the governing board members?
I looked at it, Mrs. Lambert. I thought it looked pretty good. It was well written. That's all I have to say.
Okay. Anyone
And
else?
Madam Chair, I also reviewed it. It's the same as every year.
Okay. Any other comments?
Except that we have the COVID responses.
Exactly. I was just going to say that.
Except for one small little difference, you know. But yeah, the team did a nice job with it. So we just need to pick a delegate. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else? Comments, questions?
Madam President, I do have the
Yes.
suggested language. If everyone is okay with what ASBA has put together, they do have a suggested motion that I unfortunately didn't include. I have that in front of me if you'd like
Well,
me to
Madam
read it.
Chair, we'll just say remove it as presented.
Okay,
As presented.
that works.
And I make that
Well,
motion.
Mr. Adams, in fleshing that out, if you could expand your motion to the fact that we would direct our delegate to represent our board's
Okay.
determined
And
position.
then I also move that we make Aaron Yannicki our representative.
Oh, wait, that's the next one.
I thought that's what you just said.
And what did I ever do to you?
She did just say that.
Well, I was reading it. It's first we have to direct the district's delegate, but we haven't picked one. So
Well,
at
it
least
says-
if we
it
can
is-
say whoever we will pick.
Well, we just picked Aaron, so can we just make the motion?
I'm sorry, Mr. Adams, but we're on D, which means that we're still talking about if we approve of this agenda to direct our delegate, when chosen, to the ASBA Delegate Assembly and to represent the board's determined position.
Miss Lambert, Mr. Adams, would you like me to make the motion?
Sure, Nikki.
Okay. Miss Lambert, I'd like to make the motion that we approve the delegate assembly or the advocacy agenda as presented and direct whoever our representative is at the delegate assembly to a vote according to our district stance on that packet or on that list.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Sure. I second.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Adams. All in favor? Ms. Tucker, if you would go ahead and just do a quick roll call.
Yes. Ms. Whaley, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Herrera?
No.
Mr. Yannicki?
Aye.
Mr. Adams?
Aye.
And Ms. Lambert?
Aye.
The motion passes 4-1.
All right, thank you.
Now can I make my motion?
Now we're down to the discussion of choosing a delegate to be able to attend the delegate assembly. Mr. Adams, you.
Oh, Aaron, I know you're going to say yes. So I still move that Aaron is our delegate.
I'll second.
Thank you.
Could, Mr. Yannicki, would you like to say something? Would you like to accept the nomination or?
I knew Aaron Yannicki. I'm no Aaron Yannicki. I accept the nomination.
Thank you, sir.
Do we need to also choose an alternate?
It's not on
I
the,
think because it's virtual, they didn't request that this year.
Oh, sure, thanks. I didn't even realize, I guess, that it was virtual.
I nominate T. Lambert as the alternate.
No, it's virtual. All right, so we'll go back to the point of, we have a motion and a second for Mr. Yannicki to be our delegate for the delegate assembly. If we could go ahead and do a roll call.
Yes. Miss Whaley, how do you
Aye.
vote? Mr.
Aye.
Herrera, how do you vote?
No.
Mr. Yannicki, how do you vote?
Well, I think I'd be a good delegate even with that no vote. And I won't even get a lunch, but I'm going to vote aye.
Thank you, Mr. Yannicki. Mr. Adams, how do you vote?
Aaron, thank you very much. Aye.
And Ms. Lambert?
Aye,
The motion passes 4-1. Thank you.
thank you. All right, so now we're into item 4A, discussion of in-person governing board meetings. I wanted us to have a conversation. It's not up for a vote at this point. It's, I just want to get a feel of how governing board members are feeling about and ideas of when they would like to convene in person. So I'll open the floor for comments.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mr. Adams.
I'll start the conversation off, and after hearing everybody else, I may come back. But the first reaction I have is, right now, if we're asking our staff to go virtual, that we stay virtual until they're allowed to come back. And I'll
Okay.
start there. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Mrs. Lambert,
Yes.
I don't disagree with Mr. Adams, except I think we should take the lead in being live before we ask our employees to. And so if we can figure out ways to mitigate concerns and to continue to provide transparency in terms of online display of the meetings and ways to provide feedback so people do not have to come in person if they're concerned about the crowd size, et cetera, then I think that's the avenue we should go. We should start transitioning towards returning live.
All right.
And
Anyone else?
Madam Chair, just real quick, to piggyback that, our sister districts like Peoria right now, what they do, in case I don't know if any of you are following what other districts are doing. Peoria, they have like 6-foot tables and they spread all the board members out, but they do not allow the community to come because of, for obvious reasons. They do that meeting while the board members are there. It's still virtual. And that's an example of one of our sister districts.
That's an idea. All right, Ms. Wiley?
Yes, I was just going to say, we do already have students, or we do already have staff and on campuses in person already. So I think that if we can maintain guidelines in terms of wearing our masks in common areas and staying 6 feet apart, which would mean some alterations to our boardroom, I would be okay with that, with the provision, as Mr. Adams suggested, that we still not open fully to the public because we can't really mitigate how many people may show up on a given day. I would also like to ensure that we continue to make the meeting virtual, which I assume we would if we were doing in person.
Okay, Mr. Herrera, any thoughts?
Yeah, I think we just got to follow the science. We got to follow CDC, and I think we really need to be careful. For just because of the second wave, if we're not careful, even opening up, and I mean, I understand that people are kind of getting cabin fever, but I think that had we been closed, even now, we could have saved lives. So I think that we need to just follow the county, the health department's guidelines, and wait till the positivity rate is below 7% at least, not just for 2 weeks, but that third week, because it includes that, you have to be under 7% that week, and then another 2 weeks. So, as long as we follow that, I mean, I think, we could definitely not just continue the online stuff, but be very efficient and continue to keep moving forward with that. So
All right,
that's all.
thank you.
Thank you.
And what my thoughts were, I mean, we already have a couple of board members that have gone to the boardroom to do it. And I thought, well, maybe people were feeling more comfortable, which is why I started this conversation. My feeling is I'd like to follow the same kind of criteria and guidelines that we're giving on deciding about opening schools, and utilize that ourselves in our criteria. And that's following those numbers and watching them drop before we do something like that. Also, we put in a purchase, and I don't know where we are in that purchase, of having the boardroom technology upgraded to see if we could do what Mr. Adams and Ms. Whaley were talking about, of being able to go ahead and open the boardroom and stream our meetings, so people can still hear what's going on. Open meeting law, mostly what it does is just to make sure that we're doing our business in public, and being able to follow through and meet that obligation. Since there is no real motion on the table,
Madam Chair,
yes.
The only other thing that I would add to it is that should we decide to go in person, if any board member is uncomfortable or they wish not to be there live, that they have that opportunity or option to either A, do it virtually, or do it via their teleconference it in through their phones.
Okay,
And again, we're not voting on anything.
we're not voting on anything. I'm
Right,
just
I'm putting this-
gathering input. So, you know,
Thank
part of my responsibility as board president in facilitating the meetings, I thought this is something I should be thinking about for the future, but I wanted everybody's opinions and would never, ever move forward without bringing it back and making sure we're all on the same page at the same time. So I will bring this back when we get closer to something. I am kind of hearing a consensus that as long as the numbers are good and we're doing well, that members would be interested in looking at coming back in person. And unless there's a strong objection from someone, I'll go ahead and I'll work with Dr. Stanton and we'll just continue watching those numbers as we are for other decisions in the district, and look at when it would be best for us to come back, ensuring we have the technology to do anything about still being able to be live and make sure that we can be streamed and meet all those other needs that we have. Unless there's a strong objection, then I'll go ahead and just keep this in mind and we'll move forward, and I'll just keep in good communication with you all about starting.
Thank you.
Okay. And then we are down, Dr. Stanton, to the updated COVID-19 presentation. And with the metrics. Sorry, I was reading one thing and didn't look at the other thing.
Sure.
So,
Madam President, members of the board, members of the audience, as we have been doing, we've been providing a regular COVID-19 update. Tonight, my team will be doing that along with a review and giving you their evaluative comments as to how things are going so far in each of their areas. So I'll start off as we always have, although we're not here together. I'll move to my right, Dr. Bailey. If you please provide us an update in regards to your area, again, review and evaluation, as well as how's it going so far?
You're virtual, right? President Lambert, members of the board, and I guess over 100 participants watching us right now. First of all, I want to thank the board members for their positive thoughts about our opening. We are in our third week of school, and I want to commend, as you have done, this staff and that at each one of our schools, each one of our 32 schools, as well as New Beginnings Academy. The staff, including teachers, including support staff, and administrators, have done an unbelievable job of really adapting to this, what I call the new now, because it's really not normal, it's our new now. And I also want to commend students. I mean, it's totally different for them, and they've adapted very well, as well as their parents and guardians who have become an integral part of the learning process. So commendation to everyone, and it is going exceedingly well. And as we get into this third year, third week, the procedures and the processes are really being developed. So again, thank you, and thank you, board members, for your support. One of the areas that I really would like to focus on tonight is what we're calling online or on-site support services. An executive order, which was classified under 2020-51, stated that we should give families the opportunity to actually provide support on our campuses, even during this virtual time that we're using distance learning. So, and what that meant is that every student would have the opportunity to actually come on site and be provided a safe place in the school campus and to be supervised by support members. We originally put out a survey out to our parents, and we asked them, would you want to take availability of this opportunity? And we had 1,200 families that stated that they would. Then we asked them to register, and 500 students actually were registered for this process. And we started the second week of school, August 17th. And at that time, we had 308 students that actually showed up in our schools. We're actually in 31 schools right now. Currently, as of today, we have 443 that are currently attending our 31 schools. Approximately 70% of the students are in kindergarten through 5th grade. The less students are actually in our 6th through 8th grade. In fact, in our middle school, we only have 16 students that are attending our 5 middle schools. So we really are really looking at the younger students that are part of this support process. We are following CDC guidelines. When the student has to be checked in by their parent or guardian, at that point there's a temperature check. They actually have to answer questions, a health screening that's been adapted from Maricopa County and being supervised by our health supervisors. Then the students are actually set in cohorts of 10 with 2 supervisors. They have breakfast and lunch that is actually brought to them. The students actually bring their Chromebook, their charger, their mask. They have to wear their mask the whole time, as well as their schedule. And so they actually follow their schedule as they would if they were at home. And at their lunchtime, they're actually provided their lunch, which is actually taken to their classroom, as well as breakfast in the morning. Again, we're following CDC guidelines. There's the 6-foot distance because they're in classrooms, only 10 in a classroom. And it seems to have been working extremely well. I must give acclamation to our academic support, to Kathleen McKeever, Molly Kemp, and Ignacio Mercado, who has been really headlining this on-site support. Also, our administrators that have been very, very integral into this part, as well as our health service technicians and our health supervisors, as well as our office staff. So we are looking forward to continuing this on-site support. If there are any questions, I'd certainly be willing to take them.
Ms. Lambert, I do have a question. Dr. Bailey, I was wondering if, thank you for that information. I think that's really helpful for people to know. It's also very interesting that less than 2 or right around 2% of our entire population are taking us up on that on site. So it really is people that have nowhere, else to go, that really need it, that are using that. I'm also happy to hear about the, groups of 10 and that we're able to keep that 6 feet apart. And I assume they're wearing their masks in the transition spaces when they're not 6 feet apart, because you said that they brought their masks with them. And I think that kind of answers the when feasible, because when we saw the guidelines, it kept saying 6 feet when feasible, when feasible. And when does it become not feasible is what my question is. Has there been any analysis as to how many students we could have on each of our campuses before we are no longer able to keep them at that 10-to-2 ratio or at that 6 feet apart? Has there been any analysis of that to know kind of what our capacity is to keep it feasible?
We would, first of all, we would always look at the feasibility, because we have so many teachers that are actually teaching from home. We have quite a few empty classrooms, so that we're able to take availability of those. So we're still taking registrations. Actually, we're up to 741 registering students. Like I said, 443 have actually showed up. So we're still taking registrations, and we would really work with the administrator if they felt as though that they did not have enough classrooms.
So if we didn't meet the criteria that we're going to talk about a little bit later in terms of the green in all 3 categories, if we didn't meet that, would there be a cap or a capacity at which we would say we are not able to keep people 6 feet apart anymore? There's no more classroom space to spread people out in order to keep that 6 feet of space.
That's a very good possibility that we would if we would go into some other kind of in-person type of model. So because we would still, no matter what model we look at, we would still have to provide some on-site support.
So, for example, if we move to the yellow category where we're doing hybrids, we'd have to reevaluate, and 6 feet apart may become less quote unquote feasible. And at that time, we would have to decide whether or not we're okay with the fact that they can't be 6 feet apart.
We would look at the number of students for on-site support that we would be able to service at that school.
Great. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Madam President.
I think she's muted.
I think so too.
My goodness, I'm muted, and this is why I don't like to mute myself. I forget. Dr. Stanton, go ahead.
Again, thank you, board members, for the opportunity. Again, this COVID update is a little bit different because we're reviewing and evaluating to date. I know in the discussion, the review and evaluation, we talked about the first 30 days. This is the board meeting we have. So I asked my team to be prepared just to kind of evaluate where we are now. You heard Dr. Bailey talk about the successes, but also the challenges that we've been facing. So to the right of Dr. Bailey typically would be Mr. Wing. So Mr. Wing, can you please give us an update in regards to your functions and capacities? And don't forget to review and evaluate.
Sure. Good evening again, governing board, superintendent, and audience. A few things, just some COVID updates. We are preparing for transition options whenever that may be based on the metrics. That's necessary to look at different options because we are to project what our staffing needs are based on each one of those options. We are revising our COVID procedures based on this week's reporting requirements. I feel like the procedures do change weekly. In this case, Maricopa County Health Services provided new guidance on Monday, which required us to make some changes. Various staff mandatory trainings, such as sexual harassment, is due on September 4th. We did look at different substitute coverage options, and you just heard today the paraprofessional option of being emergency sub-certified. We also are in the beginning stages of preparing for and revisiting our teacher evaluation model, mostly or as a result of distance learning. As far as I'm aware, it hasn't been brought up yet, but employees have been thankful of the safety protocols. For one, they're required to review and acknowledge it, but be thankful that we are sharing it and monitoring, ensuring that all of our staff are complying with it. And with that, any questions?
Governing board members, any questions?
I have one, Ms. Lambert.
Sure, Mr. Hara.
Justin, what I guess the best way I can ask this question is, have you sent out a survey, or what are some of the results of that survey that either you just sent out, or the previous one, or the last one that you just sent out? What do those results indicate that staff, regarding staff, how they feel about, virtual versus returning in class?
Well, the survey we sent out, the most recent, which was a little bit back, we're going to be doing more later on. I think that'll be brought to your attention in a few minutes, but we did ask, because teachers were able to determine or choose whether or not to work remotely from home or in the classroom, alone in the classroom, with their classroom stuff being there and present. I want to say about 25% of teachers indicated that they would work remotely from home, while the other 75% said on campus. I do know that, like any kind of survey, that data is only good as that point in time. And that when, at least anecdotal data that I received from principals, is when pre-week began and teachers got to work at the school level or whatnot, more and more came to the school campus, but that's not indicative of all of them. We also, in that survey, just to let you know, we did ask about whether they had reliable internet services from home, and some did not. So we were able to provide them a hotspot so they have internet access while at home. I don't know if that helps, but that was only the survey results at that point in time.
Yeah, that does. And then are you looking at efficiencies because of the virtual thing? I mean, what positions, what processes that we, has there been any identified because of it? Anywhere we can identify efficiency, like virtual meetings and stuff like that, instead of, either meeting, before or after school or anything like that. I would imagine that that's kind of been brought to light because of all this now.
Well, I think some of the efficiencies are not just specific to staff. I think it's with students, parents, probably the society, and how all of us had to leverage our technology different than maybe we experienced or even wanted to, before the COVID pandemic. So certainly we provided some opportunities to get everybody at a certain level regarding the use of technology, the use of systems such as this. The governing board's demonstrating that today or tonight, things like that. So there's been certain advantages to that. Certainly, we're able to reach more individuals rather than have a committee meeting and in which people travel to one site. We can do it virtually and accomplish the same goals related to that. So yeah, I think there are some efficiencies.
Thank you.
Ms. Lambert, I have a question for Mr.
Sure.
Wing.
Sure, Ms. Bailey.
Mr. Wing, anecdotally, have you received any concerns by those that are on campus providing that on-site support in terms of their feeling of safety or how that's going? Does everybody that is reporting to campuses, not by choice, but because they're in a para role or providing that on-site support services, how are those folks feeling? How has that been going in terms of they're feeling safe while at work?
I mean, I don't want to say I kind of want to say it's mixed, but in most cases, it's been very favorable. To begin with, I think Dr. Bailey mentioned it. We had over 350 individuals who were trained prior to the on-site support services, and it was an intensive training, not a 10-minute video clip. And I think they were appreciative of that. I think there's an appreciation that we are really diligent on all of our safety and health protocols. We're doing even beyond some of the requirements of CDC. In addition to temperature checks, for example, we are doing health screening checks with both the students and the parents who are dropping off their kids. Those are just some examples. We do have some individuals concerned because you do have kindergarten kids, for example, who are kids and may not feel that they can sustain wearing a mask the full time at the school campus. And that's frustrating, but also understandable because they are kindergartners, right?
Yeah.
I think there's more technology needs that are provided, and some of our supervisors may not have that technical skill to be able to be comfortably assisting those. And so we have to leverage other individuals to do that and have done that. And also provided some, the hidden agenda has been able to provide some training to those individuals at the same time. So I wouldn't say that it's all hunky-dory, but we've had some concerns, but for the most part, people are very appreciative and are grateful of that opportunity.
This may be kind of a follow-up question that maybe Dr. Bailey may have to, I don't know if it'll be you or Dr. Bailey, but is there consistent site-based kind of debriefings each week, for lack of a better word, in terms of what's going well or what needs adjustments? Because I have heard, about some of the self-contained or younger kids not being able, and not complying with that mask part in terms of, brainstorming solutions or having some kind of conversation about what they're going to do about that. Is there a consistent weekly meeting on each campus that those people can come together and debrief on how those things are going?
I can begin if Dr. Bailey wants to add to it. Dr. Bailey mentioned that our academic support programs department is overseeing the on-site support services, including Ignacio Mercado from the academic services department. And I am aware that they are going to each of the sites monitoring all of the things that are happening at these sites. Similar to the experiences during our childcare over the summer, I know there's been continuous training on how to approach and how to redirect students to make sure that it addresses that particular child's need, because there's not just one particular model. But Dr. Bailey, you want to expand on that?
Thank you. As stated before, Mr. Mercado does go out and actually meets with, actually tours each school at least once a week. That's what he's been doing for these last 2 weeks. And so to make sure that any challenges that are arising, that he's dealing with them. Also, there is a site administrator in every single one of the schools, so that if support people need to go to the site administrator, then they would work through that too. Just like Mr. Wing stated, the challenges are really coming from our young students, because they're not used to wearing masks. Okay, and it's really it's unfortunate that their first experience in a school environment has to be in a environment that they're really not able to interact with other students, and they're wearing a mask and they're in front of a computer. I mean, that's where we're at right now. So I will tell you that, in fact, I talked to Mr. Spellman, our Director of Transportation, and the majority of support people are coming from transportation that are really assisting us. And what he said is that it's been a benefit for the transportation people to see what's actually happening in the schools. And also it's been a benefit to our school personnel to see bus drivers and bus assistants and mechanics in a different type of venue. So sometimes there's added benefits along with the challenges, but we're trying to monitor every single challenge that comes to us and trying to deal with it.
So if I'm understanding correctly, it sounds like if there's not really a set opportunity for people to discuss or debrief what's going on, it's more like if you have an issue, raise it up the chain of command and we'll try to help you with it. There's not really a check-in or a kind of, and when Mr. Mercado tours, he probably just talks to the administrator to see if anything's been reported, or does he talk to every classroom?
He actually goes into every room. And,
awesome.
And I've been going into every room, well, not every room, but like, for instance, I've probably been into 5 or 6 and trying to, when I go into a room, it's very interesting. I actually have to sign into the room. I have to either sanitize or wash my hands. And then I'll go around, and mostly it's the younger kids and some of the older ones. When I leave, then I have to actually sign out. So it's a real check-in type of procedure, because we need to know who's been in that room in order to track if there's any challenges that come about health-wise type of thing. So, but Mr. Mercado doesn't many times doesn't go in to see the administrator. He really is going in and working with those supervisors and checking in with them.
That's great to know. And then thank you. I do appreciate that, because I think that what I'm hearing is there's definitely opportunity. If somebody has concern, we've made it clear who they're supposed to contact. I've seen the emails, the list of people to talk to in various departments for various things. And now I understand Mr. Mercado is going out every week, at least once a week, to each school to give an opportunity. So the opportunity is there for staff to make reports if they needed to and have those conversations. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Board members, anything else for Mr. Wing? All right, Dr. Stanton.
Madam President, members of the board, in the continuation of our COVID update, Mrs. Mora from Academic Services. Again, Mrs. Mora, if you could share a review and evaluation to date of what's been happening in academic services related to our COVID-19.
Absolutely. Good evening, governing board members, Dr. Stanton, community members. We are here again. We're very excited with the progress that we have seen over the last 3 weeks. We do feel, and we've heard, that instruction is progressing well. That first week was a little rough, just getting used to the schedules and the formats and just being prepared. But we are finding that the pacing of the lessons are working very well. Breaking the students down into smaller groups has been a tremendous asset for our teachers to have that interaction and smaller group instruction, and really being able to support students differently with that. We're getting into the routines of the schedules, and obviously our kindergarten, first grade families, thank you for the patience and the support you gave to your students, because we know that that wasn't easy, navigating all the different classrooms and the links. But part of the decision making and chunking out the time throughout that day for our young ones was really taking into the developmental consideration of our younger students and the amount of time that they can stay on task on a screen. And so, although the transitions were a little bit challenging at the beginning, we're finding that they really are falling into those routines nicely. And we know that, our parents of our younger students, thank you, because you are behind a lot of that success. We're excited that our art, PE, music classes are being offered, and students are having those opportunities to access those classes live, as well as with some follow-up activities at home. And so we're extremely proud of the fact that we were able to build those into our schedules and still offer those incredibly important opportunities for our students. Our teachers and our schools, we can't thank you enough for reaching out and really trying to find out where our families are. We don't want to lose anyone in this process. This is not ideal, it's not perfect, but it's where we are right now. And so our schools have been incredibly persistent. They're calling, they're finding out what our families need. If we find that there's a situation with technology, we've been able to follow up with additional devices, hotspots, but it's really those relationships and those connections. And so we do thank our schools for being just really diligent about connecting with our families. And we're also looking at attendance strategically. So, live attendance is absolutely very important, and we really stress the need for that. But if students are showing evidence of completing tasks and work completion, we're also working through that with our attendance pieces too. So, lots of good measures of making sure that our students are participating in the process. Interventions for our students is something that we have built in to each day. Once again, these are small group activities. They're focused on specific needs of students. It's during those intervention times that our EL teachers are working wonders in supporting our English language learners. Our special education students are getting the services that they need and the support, and then as well as our gifted students and the opportunities that they're being provided. And so another key part in that intervention time has been our social emotional support of our students. Our social worker team, Dorothy Watkins and group, are just really finding those opportunities that they can effectively support students and really work that social emotional learning into all of our classrooms. And so we thank you for that piece as well. One thing that we have heard from our teachers, we met with the WDA group tonight and they expressed it, and I think in some of your board reports even this morning, or at the beginning of the meeting, we talked about the fact that we made that choice to provide lessons for our teachers. And it took a lot of work and manpower, and Paula McWhorter and teams just really spent hours this summer prepping those lessons for our teachers. But what that did was it allowed for a couple of things: consistency of instruction in all of our classrooms, really those focus on those key standards that we absolutely wanted to make sure we were addressing, but really also the support of our teachers. They've had an amazing learning curve. They've had to accomplish a lot in a very short period of time. We know it's been a struggle learning the new technology tools. It's not something we were all proficient at using, but by not having to also worry about planning what was going into those lessons, it really allowed them that time to focus and learn. And so we've gotten great feedback on that, and we're excited that we've been able to do that, and look forward to continuing to offer strong lessons throughout. Yesterday, we had our first Green Day, and as you recall, on Wednesday afternoons, one Wednesday a month, we call them our Green Days, and it's a district-wide professional development opportunity for our staff. Obviously, we had to do this virtually, and so once again, Paula McWhorter, Nathan Wells, all of our academic services, instructional specialists, they came together and said, how can we make this happen? And we also got feedback from the campus administration, and just really, you know, we wanted this to be a very important day, but we also realized where our staff was, and which is doing a lot of learning right now. So we designed the day so that it would support their immediate needs, learning technology tools, distance learning, really looking at some of those other resources that we're incorporating into our classrooms. And so we had a combination of some live sessions teachers could select. We had some self-paced learning, if that was more of an interest in a style that some teachers wanted to do. We had a collaborative opportunity where some teachers could come together and talk and problem solve. We also had some wellness sessions. We had a chair yoga session. So teachers just really felt like that was what they needed during the afternoon. They were able to attend that well. We had great response. Over 1,000 exit tickets were filled out by our staff, and overwhelmingly very positive, very supportive, and thankful for the support that they received in learning more about the tools that they've been asked to work with. And so over 80% rated it either a 4 or 5, with 5 being the highest. And so we were extremely excited that offered what our teachers needed right now. And we look forward to continuing to offer professional development that's very specific to need. And we'll keep getting feedback from our campus teachers, administration, so that we can design effective professional development. Once again, we can't thank everybody enough. I think one of the comments we saw on those exit tickets that really summed up what we believe. One teacher stated, "I genuinely believe we are the most prepared district." And you know, we can't go out without saying it's been a team effort. It has been work, but it's been great. So, thank you.
Thank you. Board members, any questions or comments for Ms. Morrow?
I have a comment.
Okay, Ms. Whalen.
I do think that, you know, I don't know everything, but I do know that we do seem to be very well prepared in terms of the professional development that we have been offering our teachers on adjusting to this, really making sure that people have lots of resources available. So I think that that's awesome. The lesson plannings, I mean, we've talked about some of the silver linings of this COVID, and some of the several linings is we've been talking for a long time about kind of making curriculum and like lesson plans and standards like across the district a little bit more aligned. And so that we had those lesson plans that were for a virtual platform available, that's awesome. I think that takes a lot of burden off of the, you know, individual teachers trying to figure out how to convert, you know, what they were doing. And I'm also happy that Dorothy and her team are taking time to keep reaching out to their families that they know have some of those social emotional things. As I said, you know, I can see the difference between, you know, the spring of last year and this year. It's night and day. And even though it's a long day, there's a lot of breaks in there. So, you know, yes, goes from 8:15 to 3 or whatever, but they're not sitting in a screen the whole time. That I know that was some concerns we had from some parents. And I don't know if that's consistent throughout the district, but at least that's Dr. Stanton shaking his head yes. So at least that's been my experience. Is there's content, and then there's like a 15-20 work on your own, come back and show me what you did. Okay, now take a 20-minute break. I mean, so there's definitely, you're not just sitting and staring at a screen. So I appreciate the work that was done to create those schedules for folks. The one thing that I have heard a lot in terms of social emotional, I mean, it's great that our kids that are on the radar that are working with their social workers are getting some of that. But I have heard from parents and just reading different parent groups and things, the lack of social time with peers. I mean, you may get to see your friends in class, but you're doing your work. When the camera's on, you're in instruction time. There's not a whole lot of interaction time. And so I'm just wondering what conversations have been happening in terms of campuses providing text chains or like coming up together with a campus, a classroom roster that if people want to do like virtual play dates on Facebook Messenger or something like that? Like, what are we doing to start like reintegrating clubs or some of the other things that that help the kids with that social interaction? Is that even on the radar at this point?
Ms. Bailey, I will say there haven't been formalized conversations. I do know some schools are really taking a look at some of their positive behavior opportunities in which they can build some of that in. I think I will tell you, teachers will tell you, administrators will tell you, all of us, we're missing the kids, and when we know that's so important for them as well, are those interactions. So it's definitely something that we can have some more conversation about and really look for ways to incorporate some more opportunities for students to interact and socialize.
Yeah, because we just don't know when this is going to end, and we can't just say we're not going to do that for the next 6 months, So that would be the only thing that I'd like to see conversations around, or hear, at least hear, what the ideas are. But thank you so much.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr. Adams.
Thank you. Because we're talking about academics and teachers, I want to take this opportunity to thank all of our teachers and staff. I had the opportunity this week to meet with my WDEA reps, Lori and Chandra, and haven't had a conversation like I've had with teachers, like I had with them. We Zoomed it, and the look in their faces, the amount of time that these individuals are putting into their art was amazing. I mean, their spirits are still high, yet you can see on their faces that this is new, it's different, and their eyes were telegraphing how tired they were. These are long days for them, and being a spouse of a teacher, I've watched my wife go through lesson planning and never being around socially. This is a different time. It's a different game. It's a different environment. Ms. Willie is kind enough to talk about it from a parent's perspective and what's going on with the children. I mean, everybody is adapting. Everybody is adapting. This is a fluid, living document, if you will. It's changing by the minute. But this is my opportunity right now, our opportunity to say thank you to all the teachers. And we get a lot of emails, and I'll talk about it at the end of these conversations, from a lot of people. But we get a number of emails also from teachers. From my perspective, they appear to be split. Half don't want to go in right now because it's just not safe, they believe, and the other half say, hey, listen, I want to go in. But the reality is that everybody wants to be with their children. There's not one piece of email that I receive that it doesn't close with, I want to be with my children. So, and that's who these individuals are. Everybody in education is built this way, the passion. And I know I'm going on, Ms. Lambert, I apologize. I'll go ahead and close out. I just wanted to say thank you to everybody for a job well done. And while I'm at it, I'm going to say thank you to the administration. I know the hours that you guys are putting in. I could truly go on and on and on just saying thank you to all of you. I can only imagine, because I'm not in your industry, what it's like to try to go in the direction that you're all going and do the right things for everybody. Thank you, Ms. Lambert. I'll just say I'll just close there. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you,
Ms.
Mr. Adams. Yes, Mr. Yannicki.
Thank you, and thank you, Ms. Mara, for the presentation. What I hear a lot is I hear complaints from other people I know in other districts, married couples who work full time. One lady I know, she's a postal carrier, so she's an essential worker, so she works until 6 p.m. or later at night. Her husband does the same thing. They've complained a lot about the platforms that their kids have, that the platforms aren't very good. So not only from my perspective, did we do a good job on the lesson planning, I think we've done a great job on the platform. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, thank you for asking that question, Mr. Yannicki. We we didn't have a platform available, and some of our districts had some things in place like Canvas and some of those other pieces. We were really having to kind of come together and say, how can we make this happen? And so we've utilized Google Classrooms, but we have done a lot of work just with some of the available pieces that are out there. And we didn't rely on canned packaged curriculum. And some of the other districts, that's what they're moving towards. And you know, everyone, this has been a pandemic. We're all doing the best that we can. So no judgment on it, why a district would choose to do that. But we didn't have that at our fingertips available. So we had to get really busy and get going. I think one thing we have learned, though, is that our students love the lessons. They really like the interactive pieces that we put in there. They like the technology tools that we're using. And our teachers have variety in their teaching, and that's one thing I have heard from some of the other districts. Those more packaged type platforms are very same every day, kind of the same types of lessons. And we've offered a lot of variety, and that is something that I think has been kind of the hallmark of our WSD lessons that we've been offering, is that they're engaging and our students are enjoying working with them.
Well, and we may follow up, just a follow-up comment. We've been hearing all kinds of things, but we haven't heard anybody say that the lesson planning was canned or the instruction was canned, or to Mrs. Whaley's point, it's substantially improved from when we were in the situation in March. And so please know how much that's appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Herrera, do you have a question or any comments?
Yeah, I did. Hey, Lori, I had a question for you. Usually the first week or two, they do the testing and, you know, the first semester testing. Can you walk us through how that's working, how that's coming along?
Yes, they absolutely will. So part of the guidance we had received from ADE was that we really needed to be mindful of the fact that this has been an interesting, stressful situation for our students. They didn't get their fourth quarter instruction like we had wanted to. So we are all very aware that there's gaps and that we're going to have to really work to close those gaps. The other piece we realized is that those first weeks in, it was really literally a matter of helping everybody understand, just getting on the computer, learning the schedules, just navigating all of those pieces. So for guidance for ADE and as part of our distance learning plan, we did not engage in really collecting of any formalized data those first couple of weeks. We are at a little bit of a deficit. We don't have AZ merit results like we normally would at this time of year. So we've been having lots of conversations about how can we do progress monitoring? How can we start getting some data on our students? And it's a bit of a challenge because of our distance learning piece. We do have some things in place, some of the resources that we're using during our intervention time, some programming that we're using. RAS Plus is a perfect example. There are some tools in there that we'll be working with our teachers on to pull some diagnostic on reading levels. And we are meeting, as there's a committee meeting next week, to talk about assessments and how we will start proceeding with getting the information that we need. When we get back to in-person, that is when we will make sure that we have some benchmark assessments that we can quickly put in place so that we can start gathering some more information, and some of our traditional ones that we do at the beginning of every year, Acadians. You know, we'll have that ready to go so that when we start bringing the students back in person, we can start doing those assessments.
Okay, thank you. And then are you also tracking the Property One performance for teachers? Evaluations?
I will
Justin,
defer to Justin Wing on that one if I could.
Okay. Justin, I can wait till after. That's okay. You can send me a message on it.
Mr. Herrera, if I could, on the one thing also Ms. Moore talked about, the situation of the challenge of starting off trying to figure out where a student is. State also, one of the executive orders from the governor said we don't actually have to do a summative type, where is a kid until they physically come back. So that actually is one of the executive orders says that as well. So even though, as Lori mentioned, we are trying to figure out where is a child's reading level using RAS Plus and things like that, because you always want to know where a kid begins, and so you can see growth. But that was one of the things that's not required until we get back. Now we're using other means, but I just want to she mentioned ADE, but also the governor's executive order.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Moore, I had a question. I've had a couple of emails that have talked about how difficult it was for the kiddos on the computer, on the screen all day. Have we provided any kind of ergonomics that parents could use to help set them up, you know, at a desk or a table to be able to work on the computer and not be so physically taxing as trying to, you know, do it somewhere else? So I didn't know if we had done anything like that or be able to provide that information to parents to help ensure that their kiddos are set up in a good place.
We haven't really sent out anything formal with that. I do know I was watching a teacher and she was going over with the kids about sitting properly, you know, not putting it in their lap, things like that. Definitely some suggestions. I know many of the teachers have put tips out to their students regarding, you know, best ways to do that. I think important for us to, you know, along those lines, that was why we broke up their schedules. We really looked at that, and I know some districts, yeah, they were worried about students, you know, coming in and then leaving and not coming back. And so they have students sitting on screen time for quite a long time as adults. And, you know, for those of us that have been sitting on these meetings, it's long and it's hard to stay focused. And so just imagine you're a 6-year-old with lots of energy trying to do that. So that's why we felt it was very important to break up their schedules and so that they can get up. And I will tell you, our PE people, they're having them get up and do jumping jacks and you know, trying to get them physically moving. And so just that transition of every 30 minutes and then taking a break and coming back, while it was difficult to navigate those schedules initially, I think it's been very important in keeping them focused and giving them opportunities to stretch and move around.
Great. Thank you. Thank everybody for the work that they've done. So thanks a lot. Dr. Stanton?
Madam President, members of the board, in the continuation of the work that we're doing, Ms. Thompson will talk about business services. And again, Kathy, if you could do from the lens of a review and evaluation of where we are so far.
Will do. It's part of what I want to talk about tonight a little bit is kind of evaluating where we're at as far as what our budget might look like and what our student count is, because I think we all knew that this whole situation was probably going to affect us. It has. As our most recent reports after we've done the 10-day drops, we actually have we're tracking at about 1,500 students down. That equates to about $6.5 million. And that could be, you know, catastrophic for us in a year, but luckily we do have access to some funding that should help that a little bit this year. The Enrollment Stabilization Grant from the Governor's Office, we are applying for right now, and that should cover up to about, you know, if we lose over 2%, that would cover that difference for us for this year. We're going to try to utilize that grant to cover some of the excess costs we have. And at the same time, while we're utilizing some of our classified staff to be working in this on-site area, we will be utilizing that grant in order to pay for some of the on-site services and the additional cost of things that we've had to take care of for this situation. We may have to look at things next year a little bit differently, but I think we will be fine this year. We'll get through this school year just fine. The grants will really help us out a lot in that case. What I've also done is that you've been mentioned a little bit earlier today is that we've distributed over 18,000 Chromebooks to our students, about 1,500 hotspots to families that did not have internet access. We're still considering issuing some of those on a daily basis, 20 to 30 every day. Slowing down a little bit this week, but the last couple of weeks we've distributed several on a daily basis for our schools and our families. We are at a point now finally as that we have kind of begun to complete our facility improvement projects that we had out there. Some of the safety equipment is starting to come into our warehouse. The PPE and other supplies are starting to be stocked up pretty decent. I think we're at a point now to where we're feeling like maybe we're ready when the metrics tell us it's time to come back. We're ready for kids to come back. I think we'll be able to accommodate the things that we need to do in that way. this is the kind of the first time we've felt that way in our area, because we've been kind of pushing all summer long to try to, can we get enough in? Can we do this? Can we do this? And we're kind of seeing the fruit of our labors just a little bit right now, and it's feeling a little bit better than it was a little earlier in the summer. Kind of in relation to that, and trying to respond to some of the concerns that staff have asked questions about regarding how we're going to keep our facilities safe and things like that. Mike Kramer is online tonight to kind of share with us some of the cleaning expectations we have, some of the things we've done to our facilities prior to throughout the whole summer on this, trying to get things taken care of and meet some of the requirements for ventilation. And so, Mike, if you're available, I'll turn it over to you to kind of finish out that piece.
Absolutely. Thank you. Madam President, members of the board, audience members, I'm Mike Kramer, Director of Capital Projects, and I'd like to give a brief update on our facilities operations in response to this pandemic. First, I'd like to assure that all of our research and action is based upon the recommendations of the Center for Disease Control, Maricopa County Public Health, the American Society of Heating, Refrigeration, Air Conditioning Engineers, and so forth. So that said, we have completed the installations of protective barriers in all of our lobbies at all of our school campuses. We've also done that at our departments at various district sites. These are the public transaction areas specifically. We've completed brand new hand washing stations at 12 campuses, so students and staff can wash their hands with soap and water throughout the day. We've also sent our maintenance department's HVAC team up to inspect our over 2,000 air conditioning units throughout the district. Specifically, they inspected the units and adjusted the outside air dampers to ensure that we have the maximum amount of fresh air that's coming into each classroom, each space. Additionally, in accordance with CDC, we have changed or reprogrammed the air conditioning units so they come on 2 hours before occupancy, 2 hours before people get there, and they continue running 2 hours post occupancy. The purpose of this is to further dilute the air and basically flood the interiors with fresh air. We've also instructed our principals and facility managers to make sure that if they have a non-programmable thermostat, just to leave the unit running 24/7. Additionally, before staff came back in mass, we performed building flushing, or flushing the water out of the pipes. Many of these aforementioned agencies recommended that because the water was stagnant. It was sitting in those pipes for many weeks or months. That's been completed twice by each of our school facility managers. We've also been working very closely with our special services team in identifying areas of what we consider high risk. We've purchased HEPA machines. These are air scrubbers that sit inside of a room, plug into the wall, and continually do air exchanges and scrub the air. These spaces include health tech offices, special needs preschool, and some autism classrooms. Additionally, if you've taken tours of our district, been out at our schools, you'll see all the social distancing markers. We had some wonderful stickers made by our print shop, and we've also been using some good old-fashioned painter's tape to mark areas on the carpet, the concrete, and so forth to ensure that people understand what 6 feet actually is. Additionally, we've been hanging posters throughout the district. These posters were designed by the CDC, and they include instructions on how to wash your hands properly, right? And also how to identify symptoms of COVID-19. Also, we've been making many different purchases to ensure that our facilities operations are conducted as efficient as possible. These include purchasing electric disinfectant sprayers. It's basically an airless sprayer that you put disinfectant into that can apply that product to disinfect large surfaces in a very, very short amount of time. These machines will be at every single school. In addition, our transportation operations will receive these as well, so they can disinfect the interiors of the school buses. We've also outfitted every classroom with a bottle of disinfectant, a labeled bottle of disinfectant. This disinfectant bottle is refillable. All the staff member has to do is reach out to their facility manager to have it refilled. We've also procured the services of 2 different vendors that specialize in outsourced custodial services, that should we experience a labor shortage within that division, that we can simply pick up the phone to get additional assistance sent out to our schools. And finally, we are finishing up the edits on a form to maximize our accountability as it relates to sanitizing all of our high touch points. This form will be rolled out and placed in every classroom, every space. So we're looking forward to that. That'll be out in about 10 days. Most importantly, I just want to thank all the people that work at our schools, our staff, especially our custodians, facility managers, all the men and women in the maintenance department. They're doing a fantastic job. So again, our goal is to run a safe, efficient, and accountable facilities operation. And with that, I'll take questions. Thank you.
Madam Chair. You're muted, but I assume you're saying okay.
Oh, I am saying okay, even if I am muted. Yes, Mr. Adams.
Thank you. I want to echo Mr. Kramer's sentiments in regards to all those that are taking care of our facilities. I also want to thank Mr. Kramer for, I had conversations again with Lori and Chandra over at WDEA, and they had asked a question about ventilation. I thought your response was beyond professional and very, very helpful. So I just want to shout out and say thank you to you and your entire team with facilities. So thank you.
Thank you. Other board members?
Ms. Lambert.
Yes, Ms. Bailey.
I just want to say that Mike, you killed that. It seems like you practiced that. Did you have cue cards? I'm not really sure, but that was like on point.
These are trade secrets, right?
Yeah, that was on point. I was like, this is like an official PSA. But just fantastic job, Mike. I know that you've been working with all of your team, but I appreciate you taking the point, making sure all of the cogs are moving together. And I really do think that, we can only do what we can do. I mean, this is a virus. There's people, human error is definitely part of this as well. But I feel very confident that our district is pretty much doing everything in there possible and going above and beyond in terms of ensuring that we have the things that we need to be put in place for the safety. And it's really just a matter of making sure that all of our employees and staff understand where to access that, how to get that, but it's not for lack of, effort or availability. So I appreciate you and your team. Thank you.
Thank you. Other board members?
Hey, Mike.
Yes.
I don't know who that is.
Oh, it's me, Larry.
Oh, okay. Thanks. Go ahead, Mr. Herrera.
Hey, Mike, I was going to make a comment towards, leaving the air conditioning on, but Kathy will probably chime in. Does that mean we get the refrigerators back? Hey,
that means you don't, because it's going to cost so much money to run the air conditioner.
Oh goodness. So some of that, I know you probably are gonna love to hear about some of the savings and some of the green spaces that you've identified. So at a later date, maybe I'll get into another agenda item that we can identify some of those green spaces that you probably found by now. But that's something that really, really, really impressed. So thank you for that. And in addition to that, are you using those giant, those blowers that they were showing in the classroom? I think I sent you a picture of it a couple weeks ago.
Absolutely, yeah. They're known as airless sprayers. Many companies that basically created sprayers for like commercial painting have retooled their operations to provide a similar product, right? That you can use to spray a myriad number of disinfectants. So the application rate is far, far superior than a person using their manual, a hand, right, and a spray bottle, the traditional method. So we're really, really looking forward to using those things and increasing the efficiency of our operations.
Very nice. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mr. Yannicki?
Appreciate all the information. I don't really have any additional questions to ask. We always do a lot of stuff for facilities, and that it maybe more than ever, it seems like it's even more important than it already was. So, please know it's appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Lambert, I do.
Oh,
I'm sorry. I do have a question for Kathy. If you have a question for Mr. Kramer, I do still have a question for Kathy.
Yes, I have a question. Well, it's a statement to Mr. Kramer. I just want to tell you how much I appreciate it. I tell you, it kind of hurts my heart when I hear how we're going above and beyond. Not that I'm worried about doing it, but then the cost impact. I keep thinking, holy moly, this is a lot. This is another reason that going through this COVID and everything is what we're doing is going to really hit the district hard financially. Definitely needed, very appreciated. I appreciate you looking at the fresh air exchange. We've had these conversations before years ago with fresh air exchange in our air conditioning, and it's not financially feasible to do it in an everyday because it adds heat and fresh air, causes it to work harder and keep the rooms cooler. I had to laugh when I heard Dr. Fauci say that schools should, open up and hold classes outside. Well, he doesn't live in Arizona. That would be too difficult to do. But I am very appreciative of the depth that you're going into and ensuring that our facilities are the safest that we can make them, because no matter what, we can't guarantee anything 100%, but focusing on doing what we can to mitigate exposure is absolutely the right thing to do, and that's what we're doing. So thank you, and thank our facility managers for all that they're doing.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, Ms. Whaley, you wanted to ask Ms. Thompson a question.
Yeah, I had two questions. The first thing, and I think you kind of touched on it, I've heard, a couple times this cost savings. My understanding is we really don't have, it's not like we're banking money right now, because whatever we're saving in staffing and or transportation, we are putting back into all of these very expensive safety measures that we've been putting in. So I just want to confirm with Ms. Thompson, we're not having, squirreling away a bunch of money right now. We are basically staying afloat and using some of our reserves to do so, correct?
Well, what we did do last year, we did save some money because we were completely shut down. We've not really been shut down. We don't have as many people in our campuses right now, but we are operating. And so we're not completely, we're still having to run the air conditioners and everything else. Luckily, the money from these two grants are helping us pay for most of these facility improvements, some of the equipment we've been buying and all that. And so it's helped out a lot. But where the problem is, we've been fronting it from our M&O and our capital dollars until we get the grants approved and can submit for reimbursements for those grants. So that will be a couple months down the road. So yes, we are having to spend our money. It will be freed up at some point. We're going to need all the savings we can get, though, because these grants help us this year. And if, depending on how many of the students we recoup back for next year, that will be the next story we have to talk about. So we're trying to conserve as much as we can, but eventually we will be able to reimburse our funds with this grant dollars.
Thank you. And that goes to my second point of, with 1,500 students down 6.5 million, we're looking at around 6% or so of our budget. So if we have a 2% floor, that's helping us, like you said, this year, because they're going to give us that, 4% or 4 point whatever percent that is to make it up. But next year, even if we go up a few hundred students, we're still going to be looking at a multi-million-dollar. Very realistically, we're probably looking at a multi-million-dollar shortening of what we would normally have, because usually year after year we go down a couple hundred students, not 1,500 students. Correct?
Well, I that is correct, but I am holding out hope still that this is just the beginning of the year, and I'm hoping that we will recoup a few this year even before we get to 100th day. That's what I'm holding out for, my positiveness. I'm trying. It's still going to be a reduction for next year. That is why it's important that we realized as much savings as we did last year, and that we've been able to build a little bit of reserves with vacancy savings and stuff over the last several years. Because if we hadn't have, we would be having to make much tougher decisions moving forward. So luckily we're in a, from what I'm hearing from other districts, we're in a little bit better shape, even with losing a lot of kids, because we've been very careful with things as we've been moving along. And so, you know, again, we will still make decisions. Yes, it's. I don't think we'll get them all back this year, but I don't think it'll be quite. I'm hoping it's not going to be quite as bad as it is right now.
Yeah. And I think I just wanted to reiterate the fact that it's because of decisions that we make, savings that we withhold. We don't spend down to, you know, a small margin of our budget. We do try to make sure that we have some of that carry forward. So sometimes we maybe are not investing in certain things that people want us to spend right now, but we are not having to let anybody go. We are paying our bills. We are not, you know, in the trouble that we could be. So I just don't want the false impression that we have all this extra money around that we're saving for a rainy day. You know, it's raining now. We're this money is keeping us afloat.
We aren't saving anything right now, really, because
yeah,
except for possibly in transportation, because we're not transporting kids, but we're still spending more than what we usually do. We're having to contract out more positions because we're not able to hire as many, and we're spending a lot of money on this stuff. It's just the on-site, just an example, just this on-site services we're providing that we'll be putting into the one grant could cost us up to $1 million, depending on how long it goes on. It's just, it's something that simple, you don't realize how much it costs, but it is very costly.
Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Mr. Adams.
Yeah, I just wanted to, Ms. Thompson, the CARE Act, those dollars are helping our situation also?
Yes, they are.
And the Great Recession, I'm sorry, not the Great Recession, it was a Great Recession. How many did we lose a couple of years back?
We were just talking about that today. Back in 2010, when we had everything was being cut, we lost about 950 students in 1 year.
Right.
The difference then was you were able to realize that you had a year to plan for that, and with current year funding, we don't necessarily have that ability. The difficulty back then, that's what I was talking about today, we're kind of in better shape now because back then they were actually cutting our budget from the state level while we were losing students. So it was just critical for us back then. So at least now they haven't told us yet they're going to cut anything. They're helping us supplement a little bit. So we did lose almost 1,000 students in 1 year.
Thank you. I'm here to attest that Ms. Thompson is one of the most conservative financial directors I know in the state of Arizona, and I deal with a lot of them across the state. I'm not even going to get into travel budgets, but I want to thank you and your team. I mean, I have the good fortune to do the vouchers, and that is a heck of a team that you have. Every time I ask a question, because I'll periodically pull a couple of those vouchers, and your team, they get in there and they're spot on with their responses. So thank you, Ms. Thompson, and the team. Thank you.
Mr. Yannicki, do you have any questions?
Mrs. Lambert, no questions. Just want to again extend my thanks, and it's tough budgetary stuff, but to Mrs. Whaley's point that we're just gonna we have to figure out how to get those students back, and that we think we're potentially down, and I think she's right. As the year progresses, that'll work out for us, and then we'll figure out strategies long term to grow enrollment. We all know we have to do that. We had to do that before COVID anyway, and now we have to figure out. Oh, I guess one question, I don't know, whoever might want to answer. Are you getting any preliminaries about parents homeschooling their kids in our district? Any anecdotal information of what might be happening there?
Well, I'll start, and kind of somebody else can chime in if they want. We have been kind of evaluating. We changed a lot of our withdrawal codes to kind of mark and see why people are leaving when we find out they're withdrawing, and we do have a little bit more instances of people homeschooling or wanting to do something else for some online group that's done this for a longer time than we have. But still, the largest portion of people who have left this year have left because they've had a life-changing situation in their family and had to relocate. That's still our largest percentage of people who have left. We do have a few here and there at different schools and different locations that have left for some of those other reasons. But, you know, there's an article in the paper just this week where their homeschooling is increasing. I think people are just, that's what's comfortable for them right now.
Okay, all right, but you haven't seen any spikes really with Washington specifically?
A little bit, but nothing that, again, it's not overwhelming that we know of at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Kathy, I was wondering have we noticed that, or with the students that we've lost, how many of them are kindergartners that folks decided not to go ahead and do a virtual schooling with their kindergartners, especially since kindergarten isn't required?
What's really tough is we are very low on kindergarten. That's a hard group to determine exactly how many have you not received, because we go on birth rates, but yet you don't know if they were born here but they didn't stay here. We don't know that.
Yeah.
Interesting, since school has started though, that is the one grade level that every day increases a little bit. So other grade levels aren't, but that grade level has been steadily increasing every day since school started. So I don't know if they just weren't sure at first and now realizing school's going. I don't know. It's just that it's not increasing drastically. We're still way behind. We're a few hundred behind where we wanted to be or where we were projected to be, but it's increasing daily. It's interesting.
Okay, that's great. Good news. I wasn't sure. I thought that would be the one grade that would be impacted more, even as one of our one of our letters for public participation talked about having 3 kindergartners and trying to work through that. First of all, my hat's off to anyone with 3 5-year-olds at one time. But I didn't know how that was working with our other folks.
If I'm right, I think it's about 400 that we're down from what we projected. So we are way down, yes, but it's just kind of continues. They keep adding.
It's just a portion. Yeah. All right. Thank you very much. Board members, any other board members have questions or comments for Ms. Thompson? All right, Dr. Stanton.
Madam President, members of the board, members of the audience. So in my update, again, and we were asked for review and evaluation. So you heard from a lot of my team tonight about the things that were going well and also the challenges we faced. So you heard a lot about the tremendous planning that went into the lessons. We have live lessons with even our art, music, and PE teachers. You heard Mrs. Moore mention quite a bit of that. It took a lot of planning and time, and that was on purpose. We had a rougher start with K1, and it's getting better, but it took a lot of planning to make sure that the lessons were short enough and we had what we would normally call brain changes, state changes, things like that. So I just want to say that in our evaluation, perfect, no, but gotten better, yes. And like you also heard from Ms. Mora and even Dr. Bailey, the teams are hanging in there. We're trying to chunk it as best we can so they can handle it and our families can handle it. And I think that's a fairly good synopsis of how we started. Typically, before I begin my update, I mentioned that WSD continues to take our guidance from our federal, state, and local health officials, the governor, and public instruction superintendent along the way. I also remind the board, many times we have shared Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you first have to have the physiological and safety measures met before you can get to those higher levels along the way. So I put a little PowerPoint together. You can see it's the COVID-19 update, including the metrics to consider for in-person learning. Ms. Tucker. Much of the information we have is taken from the safely returning to in-person instruction. You can see down in the corner, it's the Arizona Department of Health Services. They put out a lot of information, as does Maricopa County Health. Ms. Tucker. Hope the audience can see this. This is just what they're calling the benchmarks. What I think is very important here is to see the color schemes that they use. We'll start with the first column, the minimum that they recommend, and there are two. I'll get to another slide where it talks about how the Arizona Department of Health does the cases compared to Maricopa County Health. But right now, for what's called green or minimal, you need less than 10 cases per 100,000. You need a positivity rate of less than 5, and then what they call the COVID-like illness, less than 5. In the moderate range, it's anywhere from 10 to 100, 5 to 10%, and that'll be important. We'll be talking about 7% in a little bit. And then the same thing for the COVID-like illness. And then the substantial area where Washington is currently, over 100 cases per 100,000, greater than 10% positivity, and greater than 10% COVID-like illness. Go ahead. Nice simple slide that they use, but you'll see ADHS recommends county-specific public health benchmarks fall within the moderate or minimal range in all 3 benchmarks for 2 weeks in order to provide a hybrid learning system. If you're going to take up a hybrid learning system, some students, and they're pretty simple with their definitions, some students in physical buildings and some students in distance learning. Specifically, ADHS recommends the following benchmarks. You'll see the first bullet says cases, a 2-week decline in the number of cases or 2 weeks with new cases, new case rates below 100. Just so you know, that Maricopa County Health uses the second one, the 2 weeks with a new case rate below 100. The percent positivity is 2 weeks with less than 7%. That's what I mentioned earlier. So that is kind of a number we're really honing in on. The COVID-like syndromic surveillance, 2 weeks with hospital visits due to COVID-like illness below 10%. And then it mentions, as I stated, the local health department may modify a specific benchmark, and they're using, Maricopa County is using the 2 weeks new case rate. Thank you. Oh. Again, I think an important slide for our community and our families and our staff and everyone to see. The green, they use the term traditional. You'll see that in their minds over the top, it says all students are in the physical building. A hybrid, a simple definition for them, some students in the physical building and some students distant learning. Virtual, all students distant learning with on-site support. And they even give the example of an intermittent, which is all intermittent, which would also be what we've been calling rolling closures over time. What I thought you'd like to see after, especially Mr. Kramer's presentation, is in the traditional or green, you can follow along the columns about hand hygiene, effective cleaning, enhanced cleaning, excuse me, proper ventilation, monitoring absenteeism, symptom screening, physical distancing, cloth face masks or cloth coverings, cohorting, field trips and large group gatherings canceled, and communal spaces closed. And you'll notice the only real place you see any adjustments or changes by the recommendations are when you are fully face-to-face. Then even in their hybrid model, you have to maintain those indicators along the way. And of course, I hope everybody sees the non-applicable applies when you are substantial or in the virtual world. So I do want to let folks know we started getting this information on August 13th. You'll see the dashboard updates. The county as well as the state started adding their updates regarding these metrics. The first one we received was on August 13th. Evidently, they must have had one August 6th. We didn't get one, at least at the county level. But they bring out the 13th and 20th today, the 27th, and then you can see it goes forward. What you do also want to see is that the date of the time period, the column 2, is actually a couple weeks earlier than the date they actually output it. So, for example, today's data, August 27th, was actually based on the earlier part of August, the first couple of weeks of August. Ms. Tucker? So this one shows, you probably take it just a little bit up. There you go, Ms. Tucker, thank you. So again, it shows the minimal, the moderate, the substantial. You'll notice if you look at the columns, they have the traditional where, as Ms. Whaley mentioned earlier, all 3 benchmarks on the green for 2 consecutive weeks of data. The hybrid, kind of their version of some in school, some face-to-face and some virtually. Again, all 3 benchmarks are going to be in the yellow, but the key, this word yellow is an interesting one because that 7% becomes very crucial. I would actually say yellow is below 7 and then it's orange. And in fact, Mr. Wing will be showing a template that he has coming up shortly. But notice in the moderate section, it does mention that in the initial reopening percent positivity under 7% with the exclamation point, to move from a virtual to a hybrid model, the recommendation is to wait until there is less than 7% positivity for 2 consecutive weeks. This provides evidence that there is a sustained decrease in community spread and sufficient testing is available. Again, that's their definition, not ours. Next slide. What I do want to show, and then Mr. Wing will probably show today's data, and then if you want to go after that, is that okay? So in the PowerPoint for everybody who, or excuse me, the packet, if you went online, you saw this Maricopa County school data, August 20th. So this would have been last week's data because again, we just got the 27th, but I have a slide for that. You'll notice 2 weeks earlier, our cases per 100,000, oh, no, there you go. There you go. Our cases per 100,000 were about 131. The percent positivity was about 14%. I do want to point out the COVID-like illness, that is a countywide stat, and that hasn't really adjusted dramatically. So that's a countywide stat. You'll see the 1 week before, the cases per 100,000 went to 82, and the percent positivity was 10.37, and the COVID-like illness was still 3. Do not move it, Miss Tucker. Actually, move it back up a little bit if you would, please. Didn't think you'd expect that one, Miss Tucker, did you? So at the top, they actually have a summary statistic, which is helpful. So report based on the school district. By the way, they're using Washington Elementary School District zip codes to do this. So they're able to zip code different districts to try to provide this data. So the overall risk level is substantial, and that is their version of red, by the way. And then the recommended learning scenario from the county, in this case, is virtual with the on-site support, as you heard Dr. Bailey discussing. So I just wanted you to see that they have these colors and numbers, but then also they have an overall, what does that mean? And so you'll see, as of August 20th, we're substantial and virtual. Ms. Tucker, next slide, and then Mr. Wing will be up after that. Next slide, Ms. Tucker. There you go. These are today's statistics. I don't know why it says the 28th. It's actually the 27th. We can always correct that. Sorry about that. But if you look at the bottom, your cases per 100K. Now you'll notice the week before actually is the week we had last week. So we brought over the 82, the 10.37, and the 3% for COVID-like. You'll notice then that our cases per 100,000 did move from 82 to 68. The percent positivity moved very little from 10.37 to 9.74, but because it went below 10, it's now into what we would call the orange, even though it shows yellow. But I do want to point out that even from today, the recommendation for overall risk level is substantial, and they continue to recommend virtual with on-site support. So before we go to my final slide, we're going to, no pun intended, Mr. Wing will wing it, I guess, but Ms. Tucker, can you switch over to Mr. Wing's kind of how he can show how you can break this data out a little bit? It might help the board understand how we're trying to analyze, and the operations team, once we bring the group back, you'll see what we're looking at. So just give
Ms. Tucker, can I go ahead and upload or put it on?
Let's see. Is this exactly how you want it showed, or do you want to take over?
Why don't you take over, Mr. Wing?
Yeah, can I take it over? I'm sorry.
Be my guest.
Of course, make it a little larger, Mr. Wing. I get a chance there.
Okay, I don't see how you guys do. Do I need to enlarge it a little bit?
No, that work for everybody? That looks decent, yeah. You could go a little bit larger, but that would then, to be able to fill it. There it is.
Okay. I think Dr. Stanton just mentioned that the Arizona Department of Health Services provided 3 columns, 3 different colors when determining what our next steps would be, the green, the yellow, and the red. As we consider transitioning, moving forward, we decided to take it one step further and not just use 3 columns and 3 colors. Instead, we wanted to enhance each of those columns, in particular the green and the yellow. And some of the reason why is that from red to yellow, there's a fine line. You're either on one side or the other, or you can go back to the other side. And so when we start making decisions, we want to get more comfortable, at least in the yellow, moving toward green than hugging next to the red. So if you'll see on here, we keep the red the same right over here, but instead of going straight to yellow, we're going from the dark orange to light orange. And then as we hit that 7% mark, we'll be in the dark yellow, going to light yellow as we're approaching the 5%. And then we hit the green. And then hopefully in society, all things go well. And we eventually get to that light blue. But this is what we're going to be using moving forward to determine our decisions. And at the very least, none have been made yet, but at the very least, we're not considering those in red or orange as of now. And just to show you a comparison and what that would look like for our current data that Dr. Stanton shared in the slide shows, you'll see 4 straight weeks. We did have it. I don't think they announced it, but I ended up finding it. What our data specific to the Washington Elementary School District boundaries were on August 6th, then the following Thursday, last Thursday, and today. You'll see here that there's 4 different criteria we have to consider. It's the overall risk, cases per 100,000, % positivity, COVID-like illness. Even now, we're still in either the red, the dark orange, light orange, so we're in the yellow for some of these areas, but not really comfortably in the yellow, hence the orange, and then the light green. By the way, for the to be considered for even a hybrid, all 4 of those measures need to be yellow. In our case, not orange, but what we consider yellow.
Ms. Tucker, if you could head back to the last slide, please. Thank you, Mr. Wing. So, you got the behind the scenes look there. That's, for those that are watching, that's what the producer sees. That's the producer work, as they call it. There you go. Sounds good. So if you want to just, we'll head to the last slide, Ms. Tucker. Ms. Tucker, can you hear me?
Yes, I'm sorry. I'm having a little trouble getting it to actually share that one. Hold on here.
Okay. So just as she's bringing that up, what I did want to share was that none of these decisions are easy. This is a lot of work. We have many, we've had multiple committees that you guys asked us to look at when we started this work. I mentioned Maslow a little bit earlier because, and one size will never fit all. It's unfortunately in these types of situations, you work with the information you have, you work with the data you have, and you think about the safety, like I say with Maslow, the physiological and safety needs as you move up Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We were tasked to give I know it's not a recommendation because this is our update, but my team is recommending we follow the metrics for in-person learning. We would communicate to parents and staff that WSD will follow those metrics to help guide us. We would use the already operations committee that's in place to come together to now begin reviewing options for in-person learning. We would modify our reopening plan based on the work that we have, and we would survey parents and teachers at the significant metric points. I do want to point out that based on the fact that we are still in the substantial and we're still in the virtual, we would not be able to open up again after Labor Day. And so just by having to have 2 weeks in a row, that makes it not possible for us then to make open school, full blown. And of course the colors share otherwise that the recommendation still from Maricopa County is to stay in the virtual for our students. So again, that's what we're here to discuss. This is part of our COVID update. Again, we were asked to review and evaluate where we are after, in this case, 3 weeks, but at least from the metrics, these are the next steps for the district.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr. Adams.
Dr. Stanton, thank you for this presentation and staff. And Dr. Stanton, we've talked. This is the communication component is so important because everything that we're hearing from at least that I'm hearing from the parents and staff, teachers and staff, is we just want to know what the future looks like. And sir, two things. One is I want to, remind everyone that we voted when this all started out. There were 3 of us that voted to approve allowing our superintendent to have jurisdiction, and obviously we're all very thankful that you come to us to update us such as we are right now, and we're also putting information out there for the community to see. And what I hear you saying is that September 8th or 9th, 7th, forgive me, I forget the date.
8th.
8th, thank you, sir. We're not going to make that date. So we're at least communicating to the community that date isn't going to hold based on the model that we're using. Should these numbers continue to go down, would you be notifying us like immediately as a board? Would we call a special meeting? What's your vision? What do you see? And I'll have a follow-up too, if I may, but what's your vision right now for how do we see the matrix going down, you communicate to us, do we call a special meeting? Again, what's your vision for the future?
Mr. Adams, members of the board, members of the audience, what I intend to do is what's on here is that once we collect this information, the operations subcommittee reviews options, then we also survey. We would bring that information to the governing board. We would do these steps to then, we do that in the next few weeks, obviously, to then come to the board with an update. And and I think it's important that we share everything that we have and what we can do. But using the metrics, as I heard the board mention in a lot of their discussion as to coming back face to face, a lot of the same things the board said match very similar to the things that the team would be working on.
Great, thank you. My follow-up, my last question or comment is going to be that I've been telling people that this is a large ship. We have 23,000 students, 15,000 family members, the number, 1,100 teachers. Forgive me, I'm not really sure where we're at, 1,800, I'm not sure. But it isn't simple for us to just pivot and say, okay, the numbers, the matrix is looking good, and we have 2 weeks. That's been good, and now we're going to go ahead and we're going to go to the hybrid or whatever model we decide to do. It's not going to be as simple as just pushing that button and things change. So, and I appreciate all of our conversations about this. So the communication is such a big component, but just letting the community know right now that, hey, we're already 2 weeks out. So you have to figure that you need at least 2 to 4 weeks after that to open up those schools if everything even looks right. So in theory, we're looking at 6 weeks if all worked out perfectly today, in theory.
I think the key point, Mr. Adams, would be that not only would you have to be, people that want to watch the colors on the metrics, but then we would also then have to have some time to communicate, time to then get the schedules out, get everybody ready to go, and then of course work with all of the departments, because as you just said, it is a large ship. It's transportation, it's food, nutrition, it's teaching, it's all those things. We are working on that now, but the idea would be there would be time just to communicate it out, make sure you have the right people in the right places. So it wouldn't just be color, and then go. It would actually, there would have to be some time in there as well afterwards. That's correct.
Great. And last question, sir, would you consider putting the color-coded matrix maybe on the website for, as people come, they go to the home page, the front page, and they see what our status is? It's almost like the military. Hey, we're in status red right now because of this or that, or.
Our intention, Mr. Adams, is tomorrow to put it during our normal Friday update, the actual metrics, so that people can see it. Because this is the metrics, again, and even though Mr. Wing was able to find August 6th. This is now our actual, since the board meeting, our special session, and now this is the first time we've actually introduced them to it. So yes, we could put it in a prominent place on the website. I know Ms. Horton's listening. We could then put it out tomorrow about the issue of where we are on the metric, and then tell the folks, just like you see in the next steps, what we're doing about it.
Great, I appreciate it. Yeah, if you could have something on that very first page that says status moderate, or what the county is suggesting we do and where we stand, I think that would be very, very helpful. Thank you, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Oh, just Mrs. Lambert, just that we're looking at, I mean, we've been talking about the metrics, and then I was checking it every day. Of course, it doesn't update every day.
No.
But then, of course, I look at other districts, and some of them were substantially higher than us in different parts of the valley. So the parents I have just want to know, so is the 4 to 6 weeks minimum, I mean, is that a realistic thing to say to somebody to plan on virtual for I'm trying to figure out a timeline, not guaranteeing a timeline, but when I get questions about, I mean, it isn't a surprise to me. I've actually been pleasantly surprised how the numbers have decreased from what we were talking about a month ago.
So I don't want to speak for Mr. Adams, but I think the total process he's saying, if you have the 2 colors plus then some additional time, would be something like that. I don't want to make a commitment to that, because if we can do it, I want to sit down with the operations team and go through it. But the idea would be that after you see your 2 weeks within the actual range, and of course it doesn't go up and doesn't change, then we would need a little bit of time. As we mentioned, I said a couple weeks. So again, I'd rather get the operations out, but Mr. Adams was saying 4 to 6 weeks, I believe, total with the 2 colors plus then transitioning. It's hard. People want a hard and fast date. And
that's it. Everybody I talk to does. Yeah.
Yeah. And if you notice, the districts that are around us, and many that had hard dates, many of them are starting to shift, because they're doing it based on, the data that they have too. And so I don't want to, as was mentioned earlier, how the board was talking, we should use the metrics that science, as it was stated earlier, and that'll help guide us. But I can't give a hard and fast date, because there are certain things that are starting to happen, holidays that are coming up, things like that may cause a spike to go up. That's called potentially a rolling closure.
And Madam Chair, and I'm sorry, and I don't mean to step on anybody, but for the community, again, there's nobody that I don't talk to that says our desire is to be with the children. Our desire is to have all the children come back. So thank you for allowing me to interrupt, but that's our job is to be with those children. We want to be with the children. So thank you.
No, Mrs. Lambert made one more comment. And no, I agree with Mr. Adams. I have community members and parents in the district, ours and Glendale Union, they just want some predictability. And if there's anything we haven't had this year, it's predictability. So, that's why they're trying to get some answers, but that's an honest answer. We don't have an exact time, but we're going to look at the metrics, and we're getting closer. And that's good enough for me. I just wanted to get some clarity if you thought the timeline, albeit fluid, was getting to a better place.
Well, I think that once the committee groups come back together, we could probably, again, as was asked, bring back information to the board when we have that all worked out, if that's the right term.
Thank you.
All right, thanks. Ms. Whaley?
Thank you, President Lambert. So first, I just want to make sure that I got the facts straight. In terms of our threshold, we're not only going through the ADHS, has their red, yellow, and green, but we have our own WESD, which is at a higher level of what they're considering at the state in terms of comfortably, I think Mr. Wing said comfortably yellow. And so we're not talking about opening up once we hit that 9. We're talking about we're going to wait until we're comfortably level to the yellow. Is that correct?
Again, I think Mr. Wing we've tried to get the data again, because the thing that's been very difficult for some people that have already started watching it is this concept of yellow. You turn yellow when you go below 10, but the number they keep telling us to look at, if you're going to consider even a hybrid, would be 7. So Mr. Wing actually decided, and I think rightfully so, to make it orange. So ours is more granular data to help guide us. Then the question, again, I don't want to decide today sitting here, what's that, deeper number, as he mentioned. He's got his blue, for example. I think we need to sit down and then figure out where the numbers are. What Justin was alluding to is, if you're on the edge and the cusp of anything, that makes things very difficult. So we'd have to look at, what would hold us at a level, I think is what Mr. Wing was trying to say. And I don't think we have that answer right now, because as you see, the slope, at least, if you look at what our data's on, is the slopes, wasn't moving at the same pace as it has in the past. If you look at it from the last time we went with Justin, I thought you had 14 to 10 down to like 9 now. So again, it's just different slope.
Okay, because I would think that we should be picking a number. I think that if we are going to put this up there and say this is what we're using to decide that we're open, we don't want parents calling us when we're at 9.5 saying all of 3 of your metrics are in this, right up against the red, open up. I think we need to say I think we need to pick the point, is what my personal opinion is, because predictability, they can watch. Now, that doesn't mean that we still don't follow the process that you outlined, which is once we hit this benchmark, that's going to signal us to do some surveys, and that's going to signal us to have a meeting with the board and talk about where we're at. But I think we owe it to our communities to have a cut point of this is when we're going to start that conversation, whether that's 7%, 6%, for hybrid, and whether that's 5 or 3.5% for person. I think we should pick a minimum of, we won't have this conversation until all 3 are in this spot, because that gives predictability. That gives people a reason to look at look at our dashboard, which I agree with Mr. Adams should be prominently red, yellow, green, spread across the top of our page, so families and parents can see exactly where we're at. So that's just my 2 cents on that, because I think we are lacking predictability, and as where we can give predictability, I think we should. And I think that there's no reason why our district can't come up with a comfortable number that they feel good about. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, I am glad to see that there's a process being talked about, that we hit this benchmark, and that triggers us to then survey our parents and see, hey, parents, we've hit the benchmark. How are you feeling? And then I like that you're coming back to the board. Now, I understand we did previously vote that we're gonna 3-2, that we're going to let the administration decide. So what I'm hearing is we will not vote whether or not you are going to come in and give us a recommendation, but we will not. The board no longer is going to be voting on whether or not we approve with the opening or not. It's fully in the administration's court. Is that correct? Ms. President, I think I'm talking to you, because that would require a new agenda item and a vote. And if by Mr. Adams' standpoint, the thing has been voted on and we will no longer have this discussion because the vote has been cast, does that mean that the board no longer has a say and that this is a purely administrative decision from this point going forward?
And currently, the way we had left it is that we would do an evaluation after 30 days of running. And we've only been doing this for about, we're only in our 3rd week of doing virtual to see how it's going and have them evaluated. They've been evaluating, obviously, as we can see by the report. I think as things go along, then Dr. Stanton and I could get together and talk and see, do we, because we're always coming there, it's always coming back to the board for input and to be able to do this. But because things are moving along and we've got all of this, then according to the other motion is that it says to modify, alter, or change the plan as needed. So a vote isn't necessary. It's not required by law. But our conversations going on and the input that we provide is important. And as we go along here, we can make that decision to bring it back and to see if the board needs to vote on something. I think maybe even when it gets to a point if we're going to go full green and everybody show up in the classroom, I think that's definitely a board discussion and to see where we are at that. So can I tell you right now this moment that we're going to come back next week and vote? No.
Okay, because that was my I guess I'm, ooh, sorry, I think that's my mic. I think that was my understanding when we said that we're going to do it for 30 days, is that it would come back before us for a vote of whether or not we're going to extend or not. So maybe that was my misunderstanding, but I was under the impression that at some point, the final decision on when to move to the next level would come before the board again. So I guess that's neither here nor there. You're correct. Nothing, we can, as the board, have the authority to delegate everything to the superintendent. We made a vote to say that we would delegate in the next 30 days to change the plan as so fit, which he did the very next day after we voted for one plan. It was changed the next day. But my understanding from that is after 30 days, it would come before the board again to talk about what the next steps were. And I don't think that
wasn't stated specifically. It was
it
a
wasn't
30-day
stated.
evaluation.
I understand. I understand that. Let me just finish what I was saying. So I understand that that wasn't specifically said, but I don't think that I'm wildly out of the ballpark for, coming to that conclusion when we specifically said for 30 days and then we'll come back around to it. So anyway, I can see that this is going to be a conversation down the line of whether or not the board will or will not have a vote, or if this will be a purely administrative thing. That is to be determined. And I'm going to take that answer as to be determined. The next thing that I want to ask is about the predictability thing again. I understand not wanting to give a cut and dry date, but I feel that if we just say, hey, folks, just be on the ready, have your go bag for a possible hybrid down the line, I don't necessarily think that's fair to our staff or our families either. I don't see why we couldn't say, hey, at this point, I don't think that we could get significant changes, 2 consistent weeks and a survey and everything else by fall break. So let's give our families the, peace of mind to say, barring a miracle and everything goes to green tomorrow, we don't anticipate doing anything until after fall break. I don't think that that's unreasonable of a date to set for people to give them that peace of mind. So they're not just sitting there waiting by the computer, clicking refresh to see the metrics. I think we should be able to give that predictability to our staff and to our families. That's my opinion. And I talking to people that I've talked to, that is something that they very much would like. I understand that it's an arbitrary date, but I think that it's a close enough date that would be a realistic, benchmark for us to be able to say, barring any magical thing happening, we're not opening until this date. And so then the last thing that those are all my statements and my point of view. I do have one question, and that question is, if we were to be light yellow tomorrow, like not orange, but significantly yellow tomorrow, how detailed is our hybrid plan? Like, how likely could we execute a hybrid plan? Because last I saw it wasn't really fleshed out or detailed because we weren't really there yet. So I'm questioning kind of where we're even at in that hybrid plan. Is it to a point where it would be extremely detailed that we could execute it in 2 weeks? And I don't know if anybody can answer that question.
Well, in the last slide, what we want to do is that hybrid plan, as you called it, was coming from the operations team. So we'd like to bring back the operations team to take what we learned the first time. We have now new information from the state and from the Maricopa County. And then if that's what the team decides, because that would be a team decision, then we bring it back to the board to show them that plan as you described it. Because as I mentioned that a long time ago, there were many ways you could do that. So I think the team would have to come down to a decision of what that would actually look like to bring to you. Because the first time we did that, as you recall, was quite a while ago. And now we're looking bring it back. But that's why I think the operations team is a good group to bring it together, because they're the ones that actually was trying to flush that out. And so we have some knowledge, at least to start with.
And I agree with that. And I think that that's yet another reason to be able to say we can't do anything until after fall break, because based on how much time it took to get the previous plan and just the on-site plan, I don't see that team coming together with a really robust, ready to go the next day plan for a hybrid model. That's my opinion, and just based on how long it took to get us that detailed of a plan for what we have now, I don't know how it would be turned around. I know that they've already started working it, so they're not starting from scratch, but it just does not seem likely. If it's not already in the can, ready to go now, I don't see how we would be able to turn it around before fall break and have it ready to go. So with that, I will yield to the next person. Thank you.
Madam Chair, just for clarification, when we voted on this, Mr. Yannicki and Ms. Lambert and myself, when we got the approval for the board to give the superintendent the authority to go in the direction that he did, we were so fortunate because he was able to pivot and accommodate a lot of what we were hearing from the community and the teachers. So I want to thank Dr. Stanton for having the insight and his team to go in the direction they did and to protect everybody at that time. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Herrera.
Thank you, Madam President. So, I think I'm hearing that, we want to be scientists, and I think that any type of setting any kind of pre-metrics or any time of, adjusting or trying to predict the formula for science, I think it's not just irresponsible, but it's also dangerous and reckless. I think we need to let the CDC handle it, the Department of Health handle it. They're the experts. We knew when we made that board, we can actually look at the minutes. We knew, we had enough questions. We knew exactly that we were giving the superintendent the authority to reopen or adjust the schools. And of course, he made the decision the next day. So, it's, every time I hear something about somebody didn't hear something or didn't get something, I'm always kind of just wondering, it's, the stuff is there, it's recorded, it's live, it's a meeting minutes. And I just really don't agree with us setting any kind of metrics or any kind of predetermined formula, because, what if we're wrong? What happens? So then we put our staff in danger. We put our staff, teachers, in lives danger. I'm not comfortable with that, and I think that's just not just irresponsible, but it's reckless as well. So, thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Stanton. And when we talk about this, I really appreciate the idea of putting it on the front page to be able to follow. And I know that everybody is feeling a lot of anxiety. They want a plan. They want it definite. I get many conversations and emails that are split pretty much in half. Others that want their kids back in school directly 5 days a week, and others that don't want to do that. They want to stay virtual. What I appreciated when you're talking about a hybrid and to seeing what is developed or what we can best meet, and some of this, it's an assumption, and maybe you can, I may be over assuming, so be sure and let me know. What the questions you will ask parents is, are they ready to come back, and do they want to wait and do the 5-day measure, which would be down in the greens, or do they want to do the hybrid with whatever that looks like, and be able to have that done? And that information would kind of also be added to the decision making as we move forward on what we will be able and ready to do. And I agree that this is a health issue. It's not political. It's not personal. It's not. We need to be able to do our best to mitigate exposure and keep our families and our staff safe. I too am not comfortable with setting a date, but outlining a plan and then staying in continual contact. Where I currently work, they just sent out saying, still don't have good signs in the data, so we won't be opening up now. But it's that constant communication. and what I see is what sending out to our parents and our staff every week will be helpful. But kind of share with me how you envision of when you would start to inquire to families, because we've already seen this since March. You can ask a question today, wait 3 weeks, and we're in a whole different situation, and what they provided, the input, is no longer a reality that we're dealing with. So how do you see using surveys and getting input from staff and families of when they're ready to come back, and how do they want to come back?
So one thing, Ms. Lambert, members of the board, members of the audience, it would be very difficult for me to answer that because you've been discussing the operation committee coming back. As it was mentioned, we would definitely want to survey the staff once we have, the plan, as was discussed earlier, whatever that plan may be. If we're going to use a hybrid, I'm not suggesting that we have to do that, but that's been discussed here. That we would survey at a significant time, as Ms. Whaley noted, that, so we know that as we get into closer to a metric. So I don't think we're going to sit on this. I think that's something we're going to ask the question. There are certain questions we need to know. What is a parent going to stay virtual? That type of thing. So I need the team to come together, and I would need them to help develop a survey. I will say, I think our parent update tomorrow, we already planned on adding the metrics to it. We just want to go through it with the board first. And so I think Mrs. Horton will have that, or Ms. Horton will have that immediately on that. And then we will certainly have it on a prominent spot. But for me to tell the team what it's going to do, I think we need to bring that team together because they were a part of the original development. Now we can bring them together again and start saying, okay, here's where we are with this new information now. Let's develop the plans. Let's get it out there. Let's get feedback. So I really
as you can tell, I'm suffering anxiety with this too, and it's kind of nice to have a set date, but I don't think it's realistic for us to set one, but just keep in communication and keep that going.
I'll give you an example, Ms. Lambert. Today, there was many people that just based on the trajectory thought for certain that, certain districts would be quote unquote in the yellow. And unfortunately, as you can see, the slope changed. So it's tough. So
hopefully we never have to go through this again, but we're learning a heck of a lot that will help guide us as we go along. In saying that, I don't know if there are any other comments or questions from board members.
Yes, Ms. Lambert. I think that's an important point to make is as we're about to open up bars and gyms and all of that, it'll be interesting to see how the next couple of weeks go, because as we saw earlier in June, when we started to see the numbers go down just a little bit, people decided it was, Disneyland and we're all going to start doing everything again and gave up on stuff. So I think it's wise to give it some time and watch those benchmarks. I totally understand the difference of opinion on whether or not picking like a day that seems arbitrary. For me, I just think fall break is a realistic and best case scenario. I don't think we would be open by then. So I just don't think that that's too far out of the park to pick, but I can definitely see a different of opinion on that matter. I do take issue with the idea that I'm a scientist. I took the 7% or picking a percentage number based on the CDC, based on the Arizona Department of Health. They're the ones that said 10%. And Justin was the one that recommended that we do one better and give even bigger, into the green or into the yellow. So me saying, let's pick a number of like 6.5 or 7 is saying, let's not only do what the scientists are saying, but let's even be safer than what, make sure that we're clearly in that thing. So I just want to make sure I put that out there, that at no point did I say, let's just make up some science.
No,
so,
and I realize that. And I think that the document showed 7%. So that kind of had been defined. So I think that where we can develop things, I'm assuming as they talk and go along, if 7% and then having that number or better numbers for 2 solid weeks, gives us time as we're creeping down in good health in those numbers, that I can see Dr. Stanton and his team being able to say, you know what, it's looking like the trajectory's gone. Now it's time to reach out and see where people are. Because all of our emotions and the anxiety that we've gone through has, it's like been a roller coaster ride since March. We don't know where we are. We don't know what's going on. Things keep changing. And I don't know that that's going to change right away. I mean, people's comfort levels are completely different in where we are and what we're doing. So I think, as you pointed out, and Dr. Stanton has pointed out, just communicating, asking, letting people know and be aware of what is going on, I think is a really good thing. So, and in saying that, I think that works out well. And I'm kind of glad to know that you're not a scientist, because I'm not either, and I wouldn't even be able to understand everything you said if you were a scientist. So we're just everyday folk trying to make good decisions to help protect our staff and our students. And it is hard, and it's hard when the emotional level within ourselves, within our staff, within the public and the community is so widespread, and it's so adversarial. It's been kind of amazing to read the letters that we've been getting and their thoughts. And what I'm hearing is just high levels of anxiety. And I wish we could snap our fingers and just protect it. I was asked the other day, how can I ensure their safety? I said, well, then we'll become the Washington Elementary Boarding School, and we'll just bring all the staff in and all our kids in, and then just live in the building 24/7 with no outside connection. Then we can help ensure their safety. But we only get them 7 hours a day. So we're just doing our best in what we're doing. And I do appreciate the conversation that we're having. And I really appreciate, Dr. Stanton, the update, because you are very good about sending information out to the parents and to the community. But what folks learn from our updates during our board meetings, I think is huge. It takes us current, up to date, so we're up to date on where you are, and be able to have discussion around it. And that's how we all learn, is through our discussion. So I do appreciate that. And I appreciate our board members. Yes, Dr. Stanton.
Mrs. Lambert, members of the board, members of the audience, I will take the feedback, all the information here for when the operations committee will be coming back together very, very quickly. So again, thank you very much for all the thoughts. And we will update for certain, and then we'll go from there. But we'll be updating on a regular basis because it needs to be done.
All right. Anything else from board members? All right. Hearing none, we'll move on to item 5 for future reports or agenda items. Board
Madam
members
Chair?
have any? Yes, Mr. Adams.
I'd like to have a future agenda item in regards to creating a formal procedure for appointment of EBT trustees.
All right. Thank you. Anything else?
I do. I have one. Can we get that presentation from Jason McIntosh, the one he did last week, I believe?
I'll have Shannon get back with you to find out specifically what that is, since we really can't converse on it.
Right.
And then find out. Sure.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Ms. Lambert, I would
Yes.
like to ask specifically for a presentation on the district's equity efforts and anti-racism efforts that they have in place, either starting of last year or into this year.
Okay. And I will talk more to you about that so we get things shaped correctly. Anything else from anyone else? Then I would like to ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. Is there a second?
I'll second.
I was going to say, everybody wants to stay on? What? Okay. Thank you, Ms. Riley. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
You didn't want a roll call, huh?
I did want a roll call on that one. I will adjourn the meeting at 10:24. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Bye.
Bye.